by ISL Consultants are glorious, but out of our reality, in my opinion, and budgets. We could deal with the realistic approach to it and simply repair covers, as I indicated in the email, and put the lining as required on 2/3 of down the hill. This can be done in a budget scale, and that will allow us to resurface the street. Please read my notes and see if this can be put in this year's budget somehow. This repair of the road has been planned for since I'm in a village, so maybe it's the time to do it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stretsky, and we do have your email. And again, thank you very much. Is there another resident that would like to participate? If so, please speak up and we'll get you going.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Stone, you have the floor, sir.
Oh, thank you. I'm just testing my microphone.
Would you like to gather yourself for a second?
Yeah, I haven't done this before, and I'm a little unsure of the way things are happening, but I'll
You're doing just.
I'll listen in.
You did not want to do part of public participation?
No, I have some comments for something on the agenda.
Well, if you can speak now or
Why don't
later.
you speak now, sir? Because later is going to be quite a bit later.
It's in regard to the walkway or bikeway that's being examined by the council.
The connector?
And
Yeah.
is that what you call it? Yeah. I can't. First of all, coming down Lions Bay Avenue, the hill is very steep, and I can't really see the sense of having a bike path down there. It's very difficult to control the speed that you go down. And very few riders that I noticed looking out my window are able to go down that hill safely. And there's a train crossing there as well. And in the event that there's a bicycle moving down there and unable to stop, it could be serious consequences. And then for the same reason, very few bikers are able to pedal up that hill. So having a bike lane down Lions Bay Avenue is impractical. So I don't think it's worth doing. And there aren't very many people who use the buses on Lions Bay Avenue. And I can't see having a walkway for people on Lions Bay Avenue who don't use the buses. So don't think it's a proper use of money and funds. Just because you have money, that doesn't mean you have to spend it on something that really will not be worthwhile or useful. And if there's a concern about the speed on Lions Bay Avenue, as I've mentioned for the past 15 or 20 years, just a matter of putting some speed signs, 20 kilometers per hour, on that portion of roadway would be sufficient. Most people using the village park are villagers and are aware that other villagers are on the roadway, and I don't see any real problem with regard to speed of traffic or safety for people, pedestrians walking on the side of the road. So I would encourage council not to go ahead with such a project and concentrate more on more important things to get done. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stone. If you can mute yourself, that would be great. And for me
How do I
personally,
do that?
you go to the bottom left.
What?
Just press star 9.
9?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
There you go. And Mr. Stone, I hope you can hear me. It's been a long time since I've heard your voice. I miss it dearly. Thank you. Okay, and one more chance. If we still have if another person would like to speak, this would be your chance. Please speak up and we'll go. Thank you, Brenda. You're up. Unmute, please.
Thank you very much. And Michael's going
Just
to
a
try and get
sec.
out on his field.
Just a second, Brenda. We'll get organized here.
Okay,
We're good.
sorry.
Sure.
Okay,
But if
Brenda.
I can go on Michael's, if he can come back and join me here, he was going to go on his own computer and speak. But my be very brief because I had thought it was at 7:30 and I was going to read the piece in detail. So let me be brief and then maybe join you tomorrow night if that's okay. But Michael will make similar comments to mine. Just that this is really a great document, first of all, so congratulations to everybody. And secondly, it's a document that I think really would benefit from having community, more wide community input. And so two challenges that I think council has in doing this right now is, of course, COVID and being on Zoom. But the other challenge that I think we have is that it's the timing of it is in December. And I'm wondering, and maybe there's a timeline, but if there isn't a timeline, I'm wondering if this can be done in February or March when spring starts to come and people would have the energy for inputting on this. Because as I say, it is obviously a lot of work's gone into the preparation of this. And then maybe lastly, I'll just say, so I'll review it, and if I have something more to add for tomorrow night, I certainly will come on tomorrow night. And my apologies, we just come in from a run, and suddenly Mike's like, it starts at 4 o'clock. Anyway, but so the integrity of the document and the integrity of sending it out to everyone, I really applaud. But I would just say that December is a month, I would say from late November through December is a month that is just a challenge for the community spirit to be on something like planning versus celebration, even in the time of COVID or community events, I think are so I just input that because I think that it is an important document that needs community input. And as you can see from tonight, if I can just put you on mute for a second.
Former Mayor Broughton, you're on the timeline here, so.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm aware of that. I'm just asking Mike to come in for his 2 minutes from here. Oh, you're logged in? Okay. He apparently is logged in. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Anyway, so I'm going to pass it. I don't need to continue talking. Just thank you to everybody for all of your effort, and I'll pass it along to Michael.
Thank you, Brenda. Mike, you have your 2 minutes
I'll
of
get
fame.
a picture.
Go,
Sorry, I
Mike.
didn't.
You're live, Mike.
Okay. Sorry?
You're live.
Oh, live. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Anyway, I'd just like to amplify what Brenda said in terms of timing. But in addition to that, I'm quite concerned about the village taking any initiatives during COVID. That I really believe that there is a lot of challenges out there for the village of citizens of the village of Lions Bay in terms of any kind of additional expense, any kind of, I would say it's really a time to hold the line in terms of any taxes and any additional costs to the village. And in terms, I'll just pick up on a couple of points that I raised in a letter that we wrote yesterday, and that is the COVID-19 pandemic is creating considerable hardship for some residents who have been substantially impacted by the downturn in the economy. The impact is sometimes not well understood by many salaried and fixed income individuals who may be maintaining the same income while decreasing their expenses at this time. It is imperative that council consider both the financial and personal well-being of all residences. So I think it's had a serious economic impact, and that residents will find any kind of tax. Some residents will find any kind of tax increases as a real challenge. So I just ask you to really keep that in mind. Okay. Otherwise, I think in terms of timing. And in terms of the medium that's used to input, I really believe that strategic planning is a very active event. And while I really applaud the council has put out the document and is seeking input, if there are things that can be delayed in terms of the input, that there will be a better time for that to occur. Okay, so and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Broughton. And I think, why not? Why don't we squeeze one more in if there is anybody? Otherwise, we'll go to the next piece. We're done. Thank you very much. That would be concluding the public participation pieces. Thank you, residents who participated. Next piece up is the reports, and the first one up is from the CAO, the information report on strategic planning, priority setting workshop schedule. CAO, you have the chair. Have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks everyone for being here. So this information report just basically sets out the agenda for today and tomorrow in terms of the time allocations for the topics that are on the agenda. As well, there is the draft document, which is essentially the 2020 corporate strategic planning and 2020 priority setting document that is on our website with additional notations and updates for discussion. And we'll get into further details as we go through each of these items over the next couple of days here, beginning with tonight. At the beginning of the document, it talks a little bit about the role of a municipality legislatively to provide for governance of its citizens and for their well-being in a number of different respects. Talks about what is strategic planning and priority setting, and something that's important for every local government to do, to set the strategic direction and goals, establish what the shared values and expectations are, providing a roadmap for everyone to follow, allocating resources to achieve the objectives, and providing a basis for evaluating the progress that has been made. It goes on to talk about the role of council and the key components of council's governance role in setting the corporation's strategic direction, allocating the resources, both human and financial, managing risks to the organization, and overseeing and reporting to the community. Those are difficult tasks. They're challenging for all local government elected officials, and but that's council's role, and they strive to do that and fulfill that in order to provide the best governance possible for the Village of Lions Bay. The role of staff is to be responsible, myself being responsible for the day-to-day operations of the organization and advancing the strategic priorities of council. Much of those day-to-day operations involve core work, so the things that we do every day in fulfillment of all those things that are necessary in order to keep the village functioning and to further the objectives of council's strategic plan on a larger scale. But there's a number of things that we just have to do on a day-to-day basis, from answering telephones and emails, inquiries, applications from residents, all kinds of different things, as I'm sure you know. And we try to do that to keep everything functioning and working well. That eats up a lot of staff's time, in fact most of staff's time, in any municipality, particularly in a small one where the resources are somewhat limited. Then there's the role of the public. What is the role of the public? Well, the public is needed in terms of this partnership between council and staff and the public. The public is needed to be informed and to participate to the extent that they wish to do so. And this is an opportunity that we're glad to see some of you taking part in today, and hopefully we'll see some more tomorrow, and is important in order to ensure that the things that are important to you are considered by council in their decision-making processes. So the document is, in terms of the strategic planning and priorities document, has been for a while, set up in a way that concentrates on 5 key aspects that are intended to make for a strong and viable Lions Bay. And they are a maintained and adequate infrastructure is vital to a strong and viable Lions Bay. Ensuring that the village is financially viable, that it's supported in terms of community planning, that there's an informed and engaged public, so communications, and that the organization that is in charge of the operations of the village is a strong one. There are a number of things that are listed as accomplishments over the last few years in terms of this document and the progress that's been made. And going forward, we're looking at items that are on the list for discussion, and some are assigned short-term timeframes of 1 to 2 years, medium-term 2 to 4 years, or long-term over 4 years, and obviously into the next council's mandate. So we'll begin with infrastructure, and we're going to have Mr. Jaffer, the Manager of Public Works, lead us off and provide an update on sort of the key aspects of our infrastructure and where we're at and where we're going. Mr. Jaffer.
Here. Is this a voting meeting or a discussion meeting?
No, it's discussion where council wishes to move in a certain direction, and then council can make a recommendation to council. This is a committee. It's the Strategic Planning Committee, and that's what this meeting is. It's a committee meeting. So if there are resolutions to be put forward, they would be recommendations to council sitting as council, which would come to the December 15th meeting. And there are a couple of things that will be on that list. So,
Thank you.
and I guess actually before moving on to infrastructure, I should ask council, as per the introductory statement that's in the agenda, you know, if there are any things that you would like to talk about before we get into the meat of the items and topics. Anything in terms of what you hope to produce tonight and tomorrow night, and what you want to share with the community.
Councillors, Councillor Abbott, your hand is up. Thank you very much. Sorry. Councillor Abbott, thank you.
Okay, thanks. I'm assuming you saw the raised hand thing is working. I'm not seeing it on my side, but I'll do
Yes, thank you for your patience, sir.
Okay, no problem. I'll endeavour to take it down as I put it up and I'm done. Just a couple of comments on this report that CEO has given to us here. I just, reading the role of council, and the last statement, the distractions are everywhere for all of council. Staying focused on the most important things is, rather than operational matters, can be exceptionally challenging for many elected officials. I would also like to add, there's a similar thing that staff need to keep in mind. I think we have an infrastructure master plan. We put it out there at considerable. We sort of had this study done at considerable expense. I think it might have been $130,000. It's a roadmap to what was believed done by previous council, for those that don't know. What we believe we need to do in our infrastructure, and we've made some considerable traction on that. But I think we need to keep in mind that that is the master plan, that is the goal, and anything we wish to do that's not on that list, you should first consider why it's more important than the rest of the things on the list. And I might bring that up probably later in one of the items that's going to come up later. I'd also like to comment on the public participation part of it. I like there's a statement here about the policy and direction to be informed and aligned with public's preferences. I think that part we miss all too often. And the key in that statement is, and I know everything's a vote, not everything's a referendum, not everything's a poll, but public's preferences is a key part in the decisions we make, and I think we tend to miss that from time to time. And then one other comment on behalf of one of the residents that wrote in, Simons, who cannot join us on the stage tonight. She suggested that this overarching goal statement that we have on the bottom of our page 9 be expanded to include something along the lines of, for the future of residents recognizing the adaptation to climate change. And she felt climate change was important enough activity for the future of not Lions Bay, but the world in general, that it should be kind of weaved into that statement somehow. So I'd like to put that forward for consideration at some point, or comment right now if anyone wishes to. And then my last point, and I think we tried to do this before the document went out. I think all the bullets of activities should be listed as undone or ongoing only. We should clean up the history. The list gets a bit long and gets lost. And things like the 5th bullet that says metro water pipeline feasibility research is dismissed as a viable option. Well, I think at the end of this session we should clean this up and get rid of things like that. So we have some key goals and focuses. Several people commented the stuff we put out there, the have your say, as well as this document was just too much to comprehend at once. So I think we'll get better resident input if we can get it down to key focuses, maybe some of the stuff that's less important or longer timeline on a separate sheet, parking lot, or somehow coordinated that way, and get rid of the history. I think previous council have done well, staff have done well, got rid of a lot of stuff, but we don't need to pat ourselves on the back every year, so I'd like to see that kind of shortened and more focused. That's all the comments I had. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott, and I will hold your theme, and in particular, in terms of the length that the council members speak, I am looking for efficiency and time of speaking, so let's get right to the point. As Councillor Abbott said, focus and efficiency is my theme for this evening. So with that, Public Works Manager, I think you're up.
So I won't go through all of the details of the report, but I will summarize some of the sections. Essentially, the municipality has assets that have exceeded or are approaching the expected life expectancies. Critically, these include cast iron water mains, asbestos cement water mains that were installed some 60 or more years ago. PRVs that have a service life of 25 years are being pushed to 30 and 35 years in some cases. And roads and bridges that have seen little or no major repairs or upgrades since they were installed. On the water side, the key issue that we're working on right now is filtration avoidance. Filtration avoidance was not completed in 2010 when the plants were upgraded. So from Vancouver Coastal Health's perspective, we have two options. Either we apply for filtration avoidance again, or we move towards adding filtration to our water system. I've included the estimate from the 2016 Infrastructure Master Plan for some of the filtration options. However, I believe those costs are significantly lower than what we can expect to see. So in terms of filtration avoidance, there's 3 critical issues that we need to correct before we're granted filtration avoidance. The first is disinfection, chlorine contact time. We don't have a proper procedure for periods of water outage where our intakes are plugged and we're drawing down water in the tank. So right now we've got an engineering firm, Water Chemistry, that's working with us to create a procedure and a process for which we can manage chlorine contact time in the event of blockages in our intakes. The other issue that we have is UV transmittance. So when the treatment plants were upgraded in 2009, 2010, AECOM did EarthTech at the time did a UVT analysis for 6 months on the water within the drinking water catchment. Unfortunately, that was only in the summertime. It didn't include the fall and the winter. And what we are finding right now is that UVT is dropping to levels below 90%. The 90% is a critical value that our UV reactors are calibrated to treat water at. By going below the 90%, we're not treating water at the required dosage. We have just received an estimate to upgrade just the RV reactors, and that will be a $75,000 upgrade. That will form part of our budget for the 2021 budget process. The other issue is NTU spikes. So when we have a blockage in our watershed, high turbidity events, our treatment plant is not responsive enough to shut down immediately. So what we do get are peaks of high NTU or high turbidity that enter our drinking water system. We're working with the Drinking Water Protection Officer on that problem. It may be as simple as installing an actuator and a valve that would shut down in the event of an NTU spike. That's just one option. There's several others, but it's something that we're working with the Drinking Water Protection Officer on. And then finally, we'll need to have a robust watershed control program. So essentially what that means is we'll need to have a say in what happens in the watershed. We'll need to have plans for the management of hiking within the watershed, debris, any other activities that happen in the watershed will need to be addressed in the watershed control or the watershed program. I mentioned PRVs. Right now it takes 3 to 4 people to inspect a PRV station because of confined space requirements. Even at that, our existing PRV stations, the underground ones, don't meet the WCB requirements for confined spaces. Essentially, the 11 old PRV stations that were installed as part of the system originally will need to be replaced. Typically, we're looking at above ground PRV stations to eliminate the need to have 3 or 4 people work on a PRV station just to do routine maintenance. I will add that some of these PRV stations are under extreme pressure, and that's up to 200 PSI. So if you're in a station and, for example, a bolt pops because of the pressure, because it's corroded, that's pretty much like a bullet ricocheting around a square chamber. The next issue is water mains. The infrastructure master plan identified these mains, both from an age perspective and also from a fire flow perspective. So Creekview Place, Highview Place, Upper Bayview, Bayview Place, and Center, that entire stretch, those entire stretches of water main are A, cast iron and asbestos cement, and B, don't provide the fire flow volumes required under the Fire Underwriters Survey. Those are the top priority water mains that need to be replaced, and I would probably put the Bayview one at the top of the list because it is AC. Asbestos cement over time deteriorates and becomes punky and is prone to breakages. Given the slope of the area, a breakage of a water main at the top of Upper Bayview could be quite devastating in terms of the damage it could inflict. There are two items that weren't fully touched on in the IMP. The first is the SCADA system. Typically, SCADA computer systems run about 15 to 20 years. Our existing SCADA system was upgraded in 2010. It's reaching the end of its lifespan and will likely need a replacement. And right now we're postulating replacing that if we move the public works yard to the Brunswick pit area. The other issue is the Timbertop pump station. My understanding from staff is that the pump station was upgraded in 2015. Unfortunately, the pumps that were selected at the time were mechanical pumps, mechanical grade pumps that are used in water processes inside treatment plants, etc. They're not civil pumps used in water distribution. And what's happening is the internal components of these pumps are plastic, and the corrosion in the cast iron water mains is actually deteriorating the plastic to the point where we've replaced 4 pumps since 2016. The existing pumps are now reaching the end of their manufacturer's life, meaning that they're discontinued. And finding replacements is quite difficult and quite costly. We had 2 on the shelf. We just replaced 1 last week. So we're down to 1 and we're having trouble finding replacements for those pumps. Onto the roads. So in terms of roads and bridges, let me touch on bridges first. So our bridges are pretty robust. They were installed in the 80s. They're still in very good condition. There's some deficiencies that need to be addressed, but they can be addressed in several years. They're not critical deficiencies. The exception is the driveway bridge over Alberta Creek. And that was part of our capital program this year. We'll be bringing forward a report to council sometime either in December or the first meeting in January to address that bridge. With respect to the roads are deteriorating. There are key road failures that were identified in the infrastructure master plan. But since then, the roads have continued to deteriorate, and we've had to address a couple of significant issues just this year alone. And we expect to have significant repairs done in 2021 and 2022 moving forward. There's no option for us but to replace these sections of road now. They're getting to the point where they can't be properly maintained. They can't be plowed without doing significant damage to the road. The problem with repairing roads such as these is drainage. The primary cause of the deterioration is the lack of drainage along our roadsides. Unless that situation is addressed, the roads will continue to deteriorate at a rapid pace. Addressing the stormwater or the drainage, the stormwater management is a process that we're starting to embark on. It will involve repatriation of boulevards, reinstatement of ditches, and open water courses as they're commonly known, boulevard maintenance and encroachment limits. And that's something that Peter will, that's on our work plan for this coming year. And that's pretty much it. If there's any questions.
Public Works Manager, I have one. You were mentioning the pipes that were deteriorating that had interior plastic.
The pumps on Timber Top,
Yeah, I think there were several of them, I think, that needed replacing.
the water mains, there are
Yeah.
Upper Bayview, Highview, and Creekview.
What's our ticket number for these?
You're looking at about $1,400 to $1,600 a meter.
Thank you.
In the millions.
All right, open for questions. Councillors, any questions for the Public Works Manager?
My hand's up again, but
Thank you very much, Councillor
I'll
Abbott.
take it
Sorry.
down in advance this time if I can
No,
talk.
no, it's all good. Keep going.
Jen, a couple of questions. This watershed management plan we have to come up with, can you give us an idea of order of magnitude, hours, how many hours does it take to prepare this? Or is it a longer process over time? What does it look like to you? Any sort of idea that gives us a feel for it?
I'm trying to get some information from Vancouver Coastal Health, but my understanding is it will begin with stakeholder meetings with Flynn Rowe and others regarding the use of the trails or use of the watershed for hiking. There is Crown land that's involved, and there are competing rights on those those pieces of Crown land that our watershed goes through. So we will have to discuss those with Flynn Rowe as well. I don't know, Peter, if you have any more to add on that?
Yeah, there'll be a few ministries involved: Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Energy, Mines and Resources, Ministry of Forests. There's, I know of at least one company that has timber rights within our watersheds. So there will be a number of different stakeholders with different perspectives and different interests. But at the end of the day, what we need to where we need to get with that is a plan which recognizes the importance of our watershed and the vitality and the imperativeness of protecting it for the sake of the water that it provides to us for the residents. So it will be a fairly involved process, and we may require some assistance in working our way through that process. So we're trying to get as much information on other plans that have already been done, and looking at potential resources that may be available to us to do that. So it'll be a fairly involved process that will take some time, I expect.
Thanks, that gives me a feel for the scale of it. And I was going to ask if there was any other similar municipalities that have done it, and obviously you're looking into that. Do we see a time when DWPO, whatever the right word, loses patience or puts a hard milestone and tells us get it done by a certain time or go find $5.1 million plus? Is there any rumblings about that?
It's something that's always in the back of my mind in my discussions with the drinking water protection officer. I think for now he's satisfied that we are making strides towards achieving filtration avoidance. So prior to where we're at now, we have achieved and been working with him on several other factors, including monitoring our THMs, working on our universal flushing program, installing automatic blow-offs that will auto-flush the water main. So there have been several things over the last 2 years that we've been working on as well. This is the first, the UVT and the upgrade to the treatment plant at the Harvey intake, or at the Harvey Creek watershed, is the first significant capital expenditure that we need to do in order to further this.
Okay, thanks. Now, can you give me just the numbers on the PRVs, just so it's clear in my own mind? We had 15, 4 of which were in decent shape, 11 of which are in bad shape, and now we've added 3 brand new ones. So do we have 18, of which 7 are in good shape? Is that where we end up? Or are these
No.
new ones replacements for others?
I'm not sure where the 15 comes from.
Your
middle-
report says,
The middle of page 23 now?
oh, sorry, it wasn't 15. There was something about 11. Let me go find it.
Middle of page 23.
No, yeah, I got my numbers confused.
Yeah, so basically PRVs 1 through 11 are original PRVs that have been in the system for a long time. PRV 12 is a new PRV that was installed in 2016 at the Magnesia Creek tank. PRV 13 is the Bayview at the school PRV. It's a temporary PRV that we are upgrading as part of this 3 PRV project. The control valve on Mountain allows us to utilize, so one of the deficiencies in the infrastructure master plan was that the Magnesia tank was deficient in fire flow. When council approved the new Harvey tank, we increased the size of that tank to up the fire flow capacity. The Mountain control valve will allow us to transfer that fire flow from Harvey into Magnesia automatically. So that's what that PRV is for. And then the other PRV is the Upper Bayview PRV. So what that PRV does is it allows us to eliminate 2 redundant water tanks, phase 4 and phase 5, and 2 fill stations, the phase 5 fill station and the phase 4 fill station. So by installing that 1 PRV, we knock out hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital assets that have deteriorated off of our asset list.
Okay, thanks. I found the spot now. So your report said 12 PRVs, 4 of which are less than 15 years old. So am I to assume 8 PRVs need to be critically sort of replaced? And can we do can we do 1 a year for the next 8 years, or how much of a looming concern is this?
When you say, can we do 1 a year for 8 years, that actually makes me quite nervous. If we were to do 2 or 3, even 2 a year, that would be okay.
Okay, so for reference, that's 300K plus a pop. So we're looking at $500,000 budget, or $750,000 budget on PRVs alone a year is what you're suggesting.
Yeah, unless we can get a grant for all of them at one time.
Okay. Thanks. I just had a comment on when you mentioned the SCADA, and you mentioned the infrastructure master plan. So the infrastructure master plan does have an item on SCADA, and it was there $60,000, and I think your December updates are now, you're now saying you estimate the cost of around $100,000.
So the 60,000 that they have in there is for a control plan study.
Oh, geez, I should have read on.
Yeah, so it's not, I don't believe that that's what's required. I think we just need to replace the system.
Okay.
So what AECOM was suggesting is that we would look at all of our critical infrastructure, see what we wanted to control, what we didn't want to control, and see what methods we would use to make those connections. For us in operations, it's pretty straightforward what we'd like to control. And just a straightforward replacement of the SCADA system is what we're recommending.
Okay, so like it's a blow away the $60,000 study, you already know what you need,
Yes,
but you think we need 100K of investment in SCADA.
that's a conservative figure, yes.
Okay. And the urgency on that is really, it's not life threatening, it's about having control, it's about having a bit of a more robust system.
2 to 5 years. It's hard when you say it's not urgent.
I said it's not life threatening, I said.
Not life-threatening. The communications, the modems that they're using are the old US robotics baud, 9600 baud modems. So they're the telephone copper line modems that are being used. They're hard to find. And the last time we had a lightning strike near the treatment plant, we had to have a component fabricated because we couldn't buy one off the shelf.
Okay, thanks. And then my last comment on your report is about the roads. And I understand from what you said and from other discussions we've had this, and in the infrastructure management, some of these roads have got to the point of no repair. They need to be replaced or at least, ground up and resurfaced. But there are roads in the village that whose life could be extended with some ditch repair work as well as crack sealing or patching.
Correct.
And we've spoken about that. Is that plan going to be high on your agenda?
Well, for the 2020, 2021, and 2022 budgets, I had asked for $125,000 per year to address some of the critical issues. There are still some of those critical issues that need to be addressed. Once those are addressed, I would recommend that we continue putting money into the annual budget, significant money for crack sealing and patching and pavement repair, an ongoing program.
Okay, thanks very much.
So actually a few questions, Nye.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to, maybe I'm looking at this from a different angle, but so we have our infrastructure master plan, right? That kind of that lists very specifically what our infrastructure concerns are, and we've ranked them in terms of priorities. That's something that Public Works and staff owns, is the infrastructure master plan with some input from council.
Yeah, so the priorities were worked on with AECOM, but yes, it's something that we use to further our budgets and our operations.
Yeah, so that's one of the tools we have, right? The second tool that we initiated, correct me if I'm wrong, roughly 2 years ago was our asset management plan, right? And that's another thing that looks at critical assets that we own, and it kind of addresses a big hole that we've had in the past, which is, maybe adequate funding for O&M and saving for replacement down the road, right? That's really what the asset management plan is geared towards. And, I'm trying to understand from your perspective, where the biggest gaps are. So we've got this infrastructure master plan that kind of serves as a filter. You know, we pass all of the things we want to do through this infrastructure master plan, and some of the big pieces fall out of the bottom. Those are the ones we'll tackle first. And then in parallel to this, we have this asset management plan that now takes care of those new projects and kind of, you know, provides the adequate O&M to carry them into the future, and also puts a little bit of money aside to save for them. So, you know, in a way, we're kind of taking this bespoke approach at our infrastructure. So we do have two bigger systems in place to deal with that. So my question is, out of all of the things that you talk about in your report, you know, you talk about potable water concerns, you talk about fire flow gaps, you talk about stormwater management and repairs and roadways. If you had all the money in the world, which one would you tackle first? I guess would be my question from your perspective.
So the roadways and the potable water can be combined. Right now, if I were to ask operations staff, the most critical deficiency would be the water main on Upper Bayview, all the way down to Center Road, and then Bayview Place. Those are the two most critical areas. Bayview Place, because it's cast iron, when you open the fire hydrant at the end of that street, you're lucky if you get maybe 2 feet or 3 feet projection from the 4-inch port. There's very minimal flow coming out of that fire hydrant. And Bayview, the upper Bayview water main is asbestos cement, and that scares staff quite a bit.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
The cost for the Bayview stuff, the Center Road, Bayview, and Bayview Place, which you quoted the number here, that's what you're referring to, isn't it? $1.5 million?
That's correct. So we had a $90,000 budget item this year to do the engineering for that. So we could prepare shovel-ready plans for the replacement.
And this is the one we've got the grant out for? No?
No, that's the Bayview Drainage and Road Improvement Project. That's Mountain Drive, Bayview Road by Mountain Drive.
Thank you.
And Stewart.
Councilors, any other questions for the Public Works Manager? I have one. So I know staff, in terms of the budget discussions, which start after Christmas. So in combining our consultants' reports, our infrastructure master plan report, and staff's boots on the ground feel. So this year, when we see the budget, which is usually, I know the Public Works Manager and the CFO in particular are thrifty with the money we have and what we need. So will we see like the top 10 that are on this list?
Yeah, the goal would be to present a report at the budget that talks about the best way forward for some of this, some of the key projects on these lists.
Thank you very much. I think the lists tend to be quite long. So I think just to pick 10 as a round number, I think council would appreciate that, because clearly we're not going to be able to fund 10, but we'll be able to get a good idea of what you think is important and what we think we can do. So I appreciate seeing that at the budget time.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilors, any other questions? We're going to be seeing this many times over the next 2 months. CEO, CFO, anything you want to add? No?
Just in terms of the items that are in the infrastructure section of the strategic planning document, we might just want to quickly run through those, and I'll pause on a couple of them and speak at length on one of them.
Which page are you on?
On maintained and adequate infrastructure.
Page 12.
So at the top of that list, item A is the Harvey Tank, which is complete, and the PRVs became part of that project, and they'll be complete by the year end. So that will be one that we can take off the list for next year. The next item is incorporate, it's the same item, so that'll be done. Item C is just continuing on with the grant application. We haven't heard yet on the Bayview Drip project. The next item is item D. It was last year, Progress Cell Tower Project Support Public Consultation Process and Ensuing Council Decision. And then so the update for that is project not supported, assessing public works communication needs and exploring options to achieve communication goals. And we did receive an item of correspondence with respect to that item. It's item R10 in your correspondence package, which is an email from Charlie Bradbury, who writes about the process that council went through in terms of the cell tower application, and states her opinion that it ought to be done and dusted and buried. So there was that. I guess the only thing to add to that is that the infrastructure committee is looking at ways in which the communication needs of the village can be achieved and what those options look like, and we'll continue to investigate that and provide further clarification on what potential avenues are available to achieve those objectives. The next item is Lions Bay Beach Park Improvement Project. So we did apply for that grant application, and so we're waiting to find out whether or not we're successful this time around. We think that we strengthened the application from the last time, although I think we probably weren't very far off last time. So hopefully we'll be successful. If we're not successful, then I think it would behoove council to consider what aspects of the project they may want to consider moving forward with if the application is rejected. There may be a need or a willingness to prioritize what things could be achieved with our own funds. The next one is support UBC long-range watershed hydrology study, and that it ties partly into item D, which was assessing our communication needs. We did have the UBC professor provide us with an update on that recently, and good progress is being made in that respect. We'll continue to look for ways that we can support that important study, which really is looking at the long-term sustainability of our water supply in both our watersheds, and is extremely important information to the long-term viability of the village of Lions Bay. So whatever we can do to help that ongoing study, we ought to provide the necessary resources for. The next one is the Kelvin Grove water treatment plant, and that project is almost complete. We've got the new plant is in, and the temporary has been removed. Staff are working with the contractor to prepare the site for reinstatement of the community gardens adjacent to the plant, and get the area cleaned up so that residents can once again access the doggy beach. And the next one is develop stormwater management plan. Mr. Jaffer spoke a bit about that, and so we'll have to continue to work at that. The next one is capital expenditure focus. This was one that is held over from last year about trying to streamline perhaps service agreements and things that can be done to streamline our purchasing processes. So we'll be looking at the purchasing policy this year, and perhaps we can work that in. There was some an item of correspondence that related to that particular aspect that was mentioned by Mr. Broughton when he spoke, asking that council not make any changes in the current environment. But this is something that really is just a means of providing efficient policies and ways in which you can do business to advance and streamline the processes that we go through in terms of ensuring that we do things in an efficient operational manner. So we'll look at that and we'll come back to council. And the next one is the Lions Bay Avenue Connector Project. So this one is about Translink grant funding of 75% for a park and ride bus shelter and multi-use trails connecting to the Calvin Grove Trail halfway up the southbound highway on-ramp and down Lions Bay Avenue to the beach park. And there is a report in your package with respect to that particular project, and that is at page 33 of your agenda package. So,
Peter,
yes.
can I make a suggestion? I'm not sure about others, but we're going to go into that report now on the Lions Bay Connector. But is it appropriate now for maybe some of us to share our thoughts on the other items 1 to I, based on what you've just said, prior to getting into the connector?
Certainly, yeah, could do that.
Then I tell you what, Councillor Abbott, let's not double down on the same issue, then let's get right to the connector then, and we'll just pause here. I think that's what your ask is, isn't it?
No, my ask was,
Or all the
everybody
others?
comments on 1 to I now,
Oh, I
so we
see.
don't lose them, and then we can go into the connector, which I think is going to be a detailed report and a detailed discussion.
Okay. Sure, please be brief.
Okay, I'll take it from there if no one else wants to go first.
No, that's not the case at all. No, I'm just letting this play out.
Oh, you do want to go first?
Sure. I just have a few comments, and I'll keep them brief.
Right.
Basically, in terms of D, the cell tower, I think Public Works needs to tell us how high of a priority the tower would be for them, and then we also need to just understand all the communications needs, and it sounds like we're pulling that together. That's what the infrastructure committee is pushing for, so we'll have a better understanding of how a cell tower would fit into that mix and meet those needs. I don't see that there's any urgency there at all.
Actually, Councillor Barmer, you opened the door on this one. So to the Public Works Manager, how important is communications for our village assets?
So in terms of our SCADA system and the 3 PRVs that we're installing, not as urgent. However, it's critically urgent for the UBC study. They're getting to a point now where they're actually, their equipment is losing data. They're not being efficient in collecting that data. So in terms of the watershed study, that's a critical component.
Thank you. Mr.
Right,
Blunt?
So maybe I will just, if we do one item, maybe I can just pass a comment on the cell tower point as well. To Charlie Bradbury's email, and what Peter said earlier, are we agreed that the cell tower as proposed by SBA that didn't get approved is dead? And I think that's what Charlie is suggesting. It was turned down at the council table, and going forward, there's a question about SCADA, other communications, how we move forward. I think residents would like to know that they don't have to keep fighting that one battle. Some residents, because there were a few. And Mike Bradley might have been the most vociferous or wrote the most emails, but she's not alone in that. I think there's some residents would like to hear that we're not going to be discussing or debating the same concept again.
Well, I think that, as you know, Councillor Abbott, from the discussions at the Infrastructure Committee, the objective was to go through all of the different options for communication in accordance with what the needs for communication were, and to narrow down what options would work for Lions Bay and in what circumstances, what perhaps array or menu of options might be something that we might want to look at. So I think that at this point, cellular communications is certainly an option which, as the Infrastructure Committee has learned through discussion and through having some subject matter expertise provide additional information on, is something that we need to continue to consider. Now, what that looks like at the end of the day, I'm sure, is not going to be a 60-meter tower in the location that was proposed. However, cellular communication as a means by which to obtain and achieve our communications goals and needs is something that we still need to consider. We need to keep that on the table, and we need to figure out what does that look like. How can it be done in a way that is palatable to the community would certainly be one of the aspects that the committee and council need to consider. But no, I don't think it's something that can be swept off the table. In terms of the actual proposal as it stood that was brought last time, I think that's done and dusted, but cellular as an option. Pardon?
Sorry to interrupt you. To your point, I think that's what a lot of people have been wanting to hear. The cell tower proposal at the Harvey tank of a 6-meter tank, as it was presented, is not going forward. We are not exploring that particular proposal again. I think that's what a lot of people would like to hear. And I think you can say it and then put some caveats around it, but I think we just need to make that statement.
I would say, in my humble opinion, that proposal, as it was presented, is not going to come back. But
thank you.
Everything else that I said is also applicable.
Councillor Abbott, let's take that as a victory that it is. So I've got Councillor Cunliffe, who we're going to give her some airtime. Councillor Abbott, if you want to continue, keep your hand up. Councillor Cunliffe?
Yeah, I'll be quick. When can we expect a report on the communication options from the infrastructure committee or?
So I think the objective at this point in time is for Public Works Manager Jaffer and myself to bring a draft report back to the Infrastructure Committee in January for review, technical review of that information, and then hopefully the committee will be in a position to make a recommendation to council, and it will come to council. I don't know what that's exactly going to look like at this point.
Thank you very much. Are you good with that, Councillor Cunliffe?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hand down, Councillor Cunliffe. Councillor Abbott, got another second if you want to go. Take the. Yeah.
So, sorry, I don't have another question, not on this topic, so go back to Norm if he's got more. I have one on another topic.
Yeah, like I said, I just
That's my
had
hand up.
a few short comments. If we're looking at the list that's presented to us here, A through K, I guess the question is, how do we prioritize those? And some of them seem like almost a little bit like housekeeping. We talk about capital expenditure focusing on service agreements. To me, that sounds like a purchasing policy and a housekeeping issue that could be easily dealt with. The one thing that stands out to me on this whole thing is really the last two. I don't really know where the connector project reared its head. I don't know if that was something that we asked for as residents or where that request came from. It catches me off guard. I don't feel like it's a priority at all. And the last piece, I like the attention drawn to it, but it felt urgent as the way it was presented. In other words, this filter avoidance issue. I guess my question is, has it been recently brought back to the surface, or are we just being reminded and it's not that urgent? We just have to keep an eye on it. That's what I wanted to understand.
I would say that it is something that we need to commence now. It's been in the background and on the list of items that Vancouver Coastal Health gave us to go down and continue down the path of filtration avoidance. We've been picking away at that list. So now the bigger items are coming up. And this will be one that will take some time and resources, and we need to get started on it because it's probably going to take the better part of a year, be my guess. And so it's not something that we can put off, but I think we need to start it because it's going to take a while. Meanwhile, we do need to keep picking away at the rest of that list, as Mr. Jaffer noted, some of those other items are going to carry a price tag. For instance, the upgrade on the UVT of $75,000. So, Nye, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you've got it, Peter. The picture I wanted to paint was the fact that we've been working on this for the last 2 years already, and we've made significant accomplishment. And as long as we continue to work on it at the same pace, I'm comfortable that the Drinking Water Protection Officer is satisfied. However, I'm always cognizant, as Councillor Abbott pointed out, that there may be a point where he gives us a hard, fast, drop dead deadline. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Councillor Cunliffe, your hand is still up. Are you good, or you have a question, or shall we move on?
It's Councillor Bain, actually.
I think he's a thumbs up, or is that a hands up?
It's a hand.
Councillor Bain, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I know I got small fingers, but that is a hand up.
Okay.
What strikes me though, for going over this list of all these things, I don't think it's so much a strategic plan for us to pick and choose which ones we should go for, but more to the point would be to take a principle approach at it. For example, the principle being sort of find a balance of cost and need and affordability, and let that be the filter to weigh out what they are in priority, if you can follow that. For example, the affordability has something to do with the grants available, but the need trumps the grant availability. In other words, I don't think we should be driven by grants. We should be driven by need and affordability. And if we can afford it with a grant, so much better. But if somebody dangles a grant in front of us, I think it'd be a big mistake just to go chasing it like, like a carrot in front of a donkey. To me, it is. I just think we got to stick to principles. Like, what are our objectives and our strategic plans in making these decisions? Like, how do we choose one over the other? And then from a council point of view, we don't have to know the fine details all the time if we're standing up on the balcony with our principals. We're guiding staff with the principles and give them the tools so that they can make the better choices and the better recommendations from all things. And I think the Public Works Manager has identified the needs and the availability of funds or lack of it. And I'm sure the CFO is going to clarify that even more, and we'll find that we can't really afford to do much at all. So, I hear the term around as well, less is more. And I think that's what we're going to have to be going into in for the foreseeable future. But, I don't want to ramble on, but the whole point I want to make is our strategic plan should be a principle, not a list of objectives.
There you go, Councillor Abbott. I'll give you the last word, but I really would like to move on.
Yep. As I said, I haven't commented on J. I thought we'd do that when we get to it. But I just did want to comment on one other thing, and I'm sure it's similar for everyone else near and dear to everyone's heart. It's item E, Lions Bay Beach Park improvement projects. we get a grant and it goes ahead, all good and well. If we don't, I hope we can get to breaking this up into smaller pieces, deal with the critical stuff. Residents have raised money to do parts of this, and it's got stuck in this grant churn. And I think we all probably echo that we need to get that one progress next year one way or the other. Certainly, I would hate to see this left to another council. We didn't get it done in this one.
Thank you very much. I'm going to arbitrarily move us on to financially viable CAO, if you would like to continue.
I've got a report to present.
Got excited there.
So I'll speak now to the Lions Bay Avenue Connector Project report at page 33 of your package. So just as a refresher, reminder to council, this did come to council in 2018. That was the previous council. We were directed to look into costs for an engineered design to provide a protected pathway to join up from Lions Bay Avenue intersection by the underpass with the Kelvin Grove Trail. Instead of pedestrians, you often see mothers with baby carriages and strollers and kids and bikes going up a busy highway on-ramp with no protection. So that was something that we were looking into, directed to, and had some discussions with the Ministry of Transportation back in 2017 about the concept, which they seem to recognize the need for. The idea of expanding that by creating a multi-use pathway down Lions Bay Avenue was one that has come forward and came forward back in November of 2019 when there was an opportunity to take advantage of TransLink grant funding of 75% on $100,000 a year roughly. You can combine those allocations for up to 4 years. And was there a project that Lions Bay might want to tie in that would be cognizant of mobility, pedestrian, bike, non-vehicle, transit related? You could, so that the transit piece of this is simply more or less a way to tie together something that is safety oriented for the residents of Lions Bay. There are currently dangerous conditions that exist for people who are trying to get from one neighborhood to another on the highway on-ramp, as I mentioned, and going up and down Lions Bay Avenue. You're taking your life in your hands sometimes. There's no sidewalks, there's a narrow road, it's twisty, it's steep, and cars go up and down at various speeds, rarely below 40, usually much more. Certainly, traffic calming options are also on the table in terms of trying to slow that traffic down. We will be looking at that regardless. However, one of the ways in which the safety of pedestrians can be achieved is by separating them from the traffic. So the way to do that on Lions Bay Avenue, or what the best way I think to do that on Lions Bay Avenue would be to have that go down the south side of the street as you're going down the hill, and to have it above grade so that you've got separation from the roadway, and you've got 2 to 3 meters worth of space all the way down the hill. Going up from Southview Place up to the intersection by the underpass, we've got the ability to go through, widen a little bit, the pathway that already exists through the native garden there. So that part is going to be pretty easy. And then the addition of a bus shelter at the park and ride was something that we thought we could fit into the budget that was available from the grant perspective and what our share would be. And that's something that has come up numerous times over the years in terms of the desirability to have a bus shelter there. Currently, people who take transit wait in the rain and the snow on a bridge at the intersection. And you know, if we're going to promote transit as a means, as an alternative means of getting to and from other places in Metro, whether it's for work or otherwise, one of the principal ways that you do that is by making it an enjoyable experience for the transit rider, and a safer one as well. There may be some progress at some point in time, I hope, in terms of inter-municipal transit coming from the north, connecting from the Sea to Sky down to the metro area. So if a bus comes through and takes the off-ramp at Central Lions Bay, they would come down and would, you know, if you've got a shelter there for people to, we're going to increase frequency of transit opportunities to get to the city. So that would be beneficial as well, and it's forward-looking from that perspective. Sort of an asterisk on that would be the fact that we currently have parking stalls that are rarely used for the use for which they were intended, namely parking and riding on the transit. So, you know, we're constantly ticketing people for parking there without a Lions Bay parking permit. And, you know, we kind of do so on the edges of enforceability, given that it's transit property or Modi property. But there would, you know, under this scenario, there would likely be about 3 parking stalls maintained for parking and riding, and the bus shelter as well. So the objective here is not simply to chase after grant monies because they're there. This is something that is aimed at providing safety for residents who walk and use other means to get from one area of the community to another. It's something that addresses the objectives that are laid out in our OCP and on many points that are listed in the report. But I think that, you know, it's an opportunity. It's certainly it's you know, it's money that's there. Yes. Is it vital water infrastructure? No, it's not. But it does involve pedestrian safety, and that I think is something that is worthy of our consideration for sure, and is an opportunity where we're not just putting in an application and sitting on our hands for a year wondering whether we're going to be able to get approved for a grant. The money is there, so it's a case of saying yes, we want to do it, or no, we don't. And that's certainly council's prerogative, and the pros and cons are laid out before you. So
Thank you very much, CAO. And with the choices that are available to council, which in your package is dead center in the middle of page 35 of 72, I'll give you a second to get to that if you, while you're doing that. I'll just, the CAO has given you a bit of a background. I'll just give it a small embellishment more. In November of 2019, and I mean, the small communities, of which I was one that pushed TransLink very hard, as did CAO DeJong on this, to up this from 50% to 75%. So that's something that's occurred during our watch. I personally see this as a forever project. It's got the 50th anniversary stamp all over it. It's a go now project, exactly as the CAO said. And you know, I get the whole point that Councillor Bain was mentioning about this, less is more, but I take it to mean more about our target list is smaller. We have a certain amount of cash, that's a given piece on this one. But I think in terms of if the council is going to be draconian on saying, well, I've decided this isn't part of what I want, then we have to start looking at things like, well, considering so few people use EV stations, why are we doing one of those? If we wanted to do washrooms, we could probably knock down the washrooms and put 4 porta potties there too. That'd be pretty efficient. I could go on with several other projects that are on the list here too, that if we're going to take a draconian cash on the barrelhead, this ranks number 1 for me, then I think we have to be able to answer to the community and all of this stuff. So I'm going to get right to the point here. I see a couple of hands up. You're in the middle of page 35. The options are 1, 2, and 3. So this is the council part, whether it's a recommendation to go to the December the 15th meeting. So I'm going to put forward option number 1, and I'll be brief since it's there, is that from the committee to council to support the project and provide the requisite resolution at the December 15 council meeting. This will enable staff to move forward with detailed planning of the project and secure the grant funding from TransLink. The project would be completed by the end of 2021 and would make for a great 50th anniversary project. As a reminder of the cash we're talking about, this is about a $270,000 project, of which the village might be into 66. So I will put that forward as a recommendation, and I'll ask for a second and then we'll go to discussion. And thank you, Councillor Barmare. I'll take that as the second and we'll go to discussion now. And I see Councillor Barmare's hand up and then we'll go to Councillor Cunliffe.
Yeah, I guess I have, it was a great presentation, Peter, thank you. And I must have been asleep at the wheel on this, but I feel like it has a lot of merit. And I guess I wanted to ask a question about how mobility accessible this dashed path will be. So are people in a wheelchair actually able to use this path?
Going down the hill, that would be difficult. Perhaps from Southview Place down to the bottom of the hill, we expect that would be paved, but I'm not so sure about the portion through the native plant garden, probably not. And the portion going from the intersection to the Kelvin Grove Trail, we don't anticipate that to be paved, as the Kelvin Grove Trail itself is not paved. Going from the intersection to the shelter is already paved and would remain so.
Any other questions, Councillor Barmare?
No, other than, we talk about concerns around people, perhaps, it's a difficult time for people, right? The economy has got some issues. Some people are out of work, some people are still working. People are confined to the province for whatever reason, and I feel like an opportunity for a job like this, it's doing our part to kind of keep the economy moving. So I don't know. I think it's a good project.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe.
Sorry, I was muted. I'll be brief. I support this. I like sidewalks. It makes me cringe every time I drive down to the beach and see kids strewn across the street. I mean, they live here, they're used to it, but people come into the community who don't live here, they are not careful. Providing safe passageway is, I think, a responsibility, and I would really actually love to see more sidewalks throughout the village, but I'll take this, so I'm for it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe. And I have a question back to the CAO. Within this, I know that if this was recommended and staff does their thing, will it come back to council with what the final thing will look like before the button's pushed?
Yeah, I think that, we'll have to have more detail in terms of the agreement that I anticipate would come back from TransLink. That would be in January, but in terms of, I think the development of the details on the design, we would, I think, provide council with updates as we went along.
I was thinking along the lines of what's the technical word for the speed things and stuff like that, however, it's getting interwoven into this.
So the traffic calming?
Thank you. So I think when it comes, that's where I'd like to see a bit more on that. Thank you. Councillor Bain, any comments?
Yeah, I'm very cognizant of the fact of the responses from a number of residents that have spoken to me about the stairs going down to the highway on Lions Bay Avenue. And the most common thing I keep hearing people say, regardless of the 80,000, it's still coming 40,000 out of Lions Bay's funds. And do we really need it? And it's sort of the insinuation was that we're being led by grants as they come available. So to that point, I'm a little cautious. I hear this trail thing is that we really don't know what it's going to be like exactly. We don't have the detailed planning and everything, but on the surface of it, it could go, I see, up to about 66,000 for a $250,000 project. I mean, you get a lot of bang for your buck on that, but do we need to spend $66,000 on a project that I don't know if we really need it that much. We've got a trails group in the village that are more than happy to bushwhack and do what they have to do to make trails for interconnectivity and stuff. They can keep it simple and utilitarian with minimal cost. So I'm all for trails. I'm all for being able to move around in the village and everything, but man, there's an awful lot of money. $66,000 is still a lot of money for a community that we have so many shortfalls on our infrastructure that need funding that it kind of bothers me to sort of chip away at what nest eggs we can squirrel away, so that when a bigger project comes along, we've already eroded our capability to fund it as much as possible. So I'm really in favor of it.
Okay, is in favor or not in favor? I'm not sure. Councillor Bain, with a hand up, hand down, were you in favor or not in favor of this? It cut out just at the end.
I am not in favor of it.
Not in favor, thank you. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, my statement's probably very similar to what Fred just said. I do think a bus stop, having years gone by, I have stood there in the rain. I do think a bus stop is something that's required down there. When I used to use the park and ride, there was definitely more than 3 cars there, so it was never full, and granted there were cars that looked like they were there day after day, probably overnight. But I've questioned whether 3 is enough. And I do think the bus stop is required. I am less convinced about the rest of the project. I understand Councillor Bain saying about trails. If you want to improve the trails, that's fine. But the part of the project that's where it goes down the hill, $66,000, and I look at the list that the NIDE needs us to do, and I look at the infrastructure master plan and filter out what could be largely achieved or even completely achieved for $66,000. And there's a lot of things there. And then I think if we don't get the beach park grant, which in this financial environment is really likely, and how much of that could be improved for $66,000? And I don't see how this gets to be ahead of some of those other items. And if you ranked it on the infrastructure master plan, would it be the next project? And I think not. I also wonder, I wonder how TransLink is spending our tax money. Are they doing it responsibly? They're hemorrhaging money.
Okay, Councillor Abbott, I think you're kind of going off on the side here. So
no, I'm almost done. Let me just finish. They're hemorrhaging money, and then they they're putting out these incentives for people to go spend money on connected projects, which are nice to have, and granted there's a safety aspect to this. But yeah, I'm not in favour for those views. I don't think it's fiscally responsible.
Thank you very much then. I'm going to call a motion on this one to the extent that I can. So just to recap, this is a recommendation to go to council So I'm taking this as a recommendation either in favor or not in favor of it going to council, and then there will be a formal vote to whether it goes ahead. So all those in favor of this going forward to council as a positive, please say aye or a hand.
Aye.
2, all opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Nay.
Split vote, aye carry, it will go to council. Next item?
Oh, sorry, so there are 3 recommendations that are laid out at the beginning of the report.
You've just got the first one approved.
Well, it's really sort of it's a 3-part.
Well, okay, I presume that
Yeah, they moved and seconded the whole thing.
Oh, okay,
it's all one sentence, or one
Okay,
paragraph
sorry.
versus 3.
sorry,
So I've read it all.
okay, all right.
Next,
Um,
so that I should ever catch you off guard.
Sorry. So, yeah, there was correspondence on that item as well, R6, R7, R8, and R18. On the next one, which was water treatment quality requirements, watershed protection plans, I think Mr. Jaff has already spoken about that at length. R17 from Ruth Simons would be partly on that. And I guess that takes us into the next section,
Which is,
financially viable.
So I'll just give a brief summary. Some of this we've already talked about, but the priority action. The infrastructure grants, just in summary, they have been mentioned. We're waiting to hear about 2 ISIP grants. One is the Bayview Road Drainage and Water Improvement Project. It's about a $2.2 million project, of which $1.7 million would be grant. And the balance of just over $600,000, if we're successful, would be funded under our loan authorization bylaw, and we would get borrowing for that. We anticipate hearing about that early in the new year. We might be a little optimistic, but hopefully we'll know by early spring. And the second one also has been referenced, the ISIP grant for Lions Bay Beach Park Revitalization Project. That's just over $1 million project. The funding would be about $785,000, and $285,000 would come from reserves. 130 would be restricted land reserve. We've had about $42,000 of fundraising, and we've previously taxed for about $20,000. So that would be another about $90,000 draw from other reserves. And then under the loan authorization bylaw, just as a summary, we had a loan authorization bylaw to borrow up to $3 million. In 2017, we borrowed about $461,000 for the water tank under the Clean Water Wastewater Grant. And in 2020, we have borrowed $600,000 for the 3 PRV projects, which is being funded with that borrowing and the balance of the Clean Water Wastewater Grant. And if we're successful with the Bayview DWIP project, the ISIP grant, then that would be another draw of about $605,000, and that leaves about $1.3 million worth of borrowing from that we could use from the loan authorization bylaw. So in terms of advocating for small community concessions, as mentioned in a previous council meeting, we have been awarded an operating grant of $602,000 for COVID-19 relief. We're still trying to get some clarification on what we can spend that for, so that'll be an ongoing update to council as I get more information. The work on the asset management plan, we're just finalizing that this month, and we anticipate presenting it to council early January. The Kelvin Grove lot, we know, is still for sale. The PRV projects, again, has been mentioned, but the project's underway. We've received the loan proceeds. We'll fund with the balance of the clean water. That should be finished by the end of the year. Funding for the Kelvin Grove wastewater treatment plant. I will be presenting an information report to council at the December 15th meeting about different options for funding that project. I think road closure bylaws will be spoken about later on. And the last one is the additional sources of revenue. So that's probably kind of the biggest thing. As we know, and has been highlighted by Mr. Jaffer's comments on our infrastructure, one of our biggest challenges is to find other sources of revenue aside from property tax and utility fees. Grants are one source of additional revenue, and we have tried to find grants that specifically fit our infrastructure needs, but the spacing between the grants is getting farther and farther, and they're becoming incredibly oversubscribed, so they're getting more challenging to obtain. The whole evaluation process is taking up to a year, and grants are not available for all of the assets that we need, such as roads. We can get a grant for roads if we're also doing the water infrastructure underneath, but not for the roads alone. So as I mentioned, phase 2 of the asset management plan will be presented in January, and I think that will bring a lot of these pieces together. There's the pieces that we've spoke about, the specific pieces that Mr. Jaffer spoke about, but as well, it's just the process of putting aside money for the inevitable future replacement of our assets. So the plan is developing a 30-year asset management revenue plan, and it's going to look at different scenarios based on varying levels of risk and service that we're willing to take. But like most municipalities, with our infrastructure deficit, we have not and are not putting sufficient money aside each year to replace this infrastructure. So I think financially that represents our biggest challenge, is looking for ways to fund that shortfall. Like I say, this will become more clear. We're in a nice timing in terms of discussing it now, going immediately into the asset management plan presentation, and that feeding right into our budget. And then we can look at longer term budgeting. Right now we've been looking at windows of 5 years, but I hope to start being able to expand that into a longer window of budgeting to sort of see how we can accommodate our infrastructure needs. So are there any, I think, Peter, do you have things to add at specific items, or did we want to start with questions?
Well, I think sort of the key words in this particular item that stand out for me, that's item H, is expanding the tax base, and really to address all of the challenges that we face in terms of remaining financially sustainable and replacing our infrastructure as it expires, and saving up to do that. There was a line item in the infrastructure master plan where they estimated that based upon the projects that had been scoped at that point in 2016, we would need to put away $950,000 a year, approximately, in order to provide for the ultimate replacement of those infrastructure items over that span of 30 years. Obviously some sooner and some we've already done, but it's a big list. For a small community like us with a limited tax base, it's 99% residential, only about 550 tax parcels, roughly speaking. We only raise about $1.5 million in total from taxes from that tax base every year. To put aside $1 million a year in order to address our infrastructure deficit over a span of time, that's a tall order. We're not going to get grants for all of that. It's not going to fall in our laps, I don't think. So we need to look for ways to expand our tax base. Every grant that we apply for requires us to include wording that we will be putting away for the replacement of that asset should we get the grant to buy that asset. How are we going to do that? I don't see that being realistically feasible over the long term without expanding the tax base. So we do need to look at how do we expand the tax base in a way that is careful and which recognizes the character of this community, which stays true to that character, but gradually over time finds a way to help Lions Bay evolve so that it can remain financially sustainable. It's a tough nut to crack, and it's going to be the job of this council and the next one and the next one and the next one. But it is a path that the elected officials of this community are going to have to address time and time again. And careful consideration has to be given to how that's going to be addressed. And there are different upcoming items in our agenda, whether it's tonight or tomorrow night, that will speak to some of those options. But certainly, it's something that council should have top of mind all the time, I think.
Thank you very much, CAO. Councillor Barmier, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just, made some notes on this comment, and financial viability is obviously key. And I just, the notes that I made here for myself, just to keep it short, Ron, are cell tower revenue, some form of a cell tower. We recognize that there's revenue potential there, maybe not with the one that was floated, but something, maybe a few smaller ones. We've talked about this, ongoing, is this idea of more metering throughout the city, parking meters. We recognize this summer just how desirable Lions Bay is. When you close the parking lot, it really becomes, it highlights just how many people from the outside come here to hike and visit the beaches. And I think there's a lost opportunity there for parking revenue throughout. I mean, there are very few neighborhoods in the Lower Mainland where you don't pay for parking, street parking of some form. So I really think we're just behind the times on parking revenue. And I know, Ron, you talk about the EV charger. It actually has the potential to generate a lot of revenue. We've got a continuous stream of potential customers passing by the highway to pick up a 20 or 30-minute charge, go visit the coffee shop, have a coffee, and get some revenue out of that. So, I think there are, if we look at a couple of different approaches, there are ways to bring money into the village. We just have to have an open mind.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barman, and I like your ideas too. Councillor Abbott?
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, so I just, it's an honest question. Yeah, there's some good suggestions on additional sources of revenue. And yeah, I think we should keep exploring those wherever we can. I'm assuming, Peter, the item G is going to get discussed elsewhere in the meeting, and it's just been introduced in the financial viability part of it as a need that Pam has brought in. I think that discussion comes later. But I just want to touch on this expanding the tax base. I struggle with the idea that just because you add more people or more residences, or you get additional money that can be spent on the existing infrastructure. Because when you expand, you add more infrastructure. In theory, it's a net zero game. And because what we do is we add more people, but we spend more money, so we divide it by more people, and that's how municipal finances work. You decide how much money you need, and you divide it by the number of people you have. And I've said this before, and I know you could add one more development of some sort, and it doesn't impact the wastewater treatment plant, for example. But at some point, you get to a step change when you suddenly read a new one just because you added one more entity or one more person. It's that step change that people forget, and it is inevitable, and it always comes. So every time you add additional residences or developments, you add to the cost. And I honestly really struggle with this. Everyone seems to present it as all you're doing is adding more people, and with the assumption that the actual cost didn't change. It did change. More people drive on the road, more people are using the water, more people are adding to the infrastructure, and the asset management portion of it. Every single time we add people, things deteriorate faster, and we've got to keep that in mind. So I suggest when we look at whatever these developments are, we look at them from sort of a more holistic point of view, and it's not just that it means in the short term, 1 year later, we're going to have additional tax revenue or additional people to pay for tax revenue we need, which is a more accurate way of putting it.
Councillor Cunliffe, your hand is up. Please go, and then I'll follow you. Councillor Cunliffe, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, Neville and I have a different opinion on this. I look at it as, instead of building a 6,000 square foot home with a 2,000 square foot suite that's going to be rented out, adding people to the community, why not consider multi-dwelling units and have a family build a duplex and have 2 property taxes? People are building homes and buying homes with suites just because they can't afford a mortgage without one. So I think there's a broader conversation that needs to be brought to the village in its entirety. Canmore recently has changed part of their bylaw to maximize the size of a dwelling that can be built, as well as bring in, they've actually restructured some of their zoning to not even allow for single family dwellings anymore. There's interest in Whistler looking at this sort of model. So this is something that's happening across the country, not just in British Columbia, and it just needs to be brought to the community as a whole for discussion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cunliffe. I also have a different view than Councillor Abbott. And I mean, in the bigger picture, I wrote down what the CAO wrote, that to expand the tax base that is careful and stays true to the character of the community, I know is very important to this council. And I don't see a rash decision coming, but I see some building blocks already in place. And by that, I'm thinking of the completed wastewater treatment plant and the new water tower. The treatment plant, as I understand it, will facilitate another homes. And the the water tower has got a 25% more capacity than its predecessor did. So just on the capabilities, the engine is starting. I think what Lions Bay lacks is a continuity of housing, living in place, downsizing, or starter homes. And so this kind of fits into making us a broader community versus, some would say, a gated community of single family homes. I think at this point, council is still at the baby steps at this, and our practice has been to develop one property at a time and then sell it, and then move to a next, sell it, and then move to another one. And on item G, which Councillor Abbott pointed out, that's going to come back to the table for discussion when the KG lot sells. I think that we need to go to the community as a bigger picture and get some feedback, but also there are developers that are approaching the CAO and it's their job to go to the community too. So we're going to see what the community wants to do out of this, but on balance, I do see a need for greater housing opportunities, and I think that just given the examples that I've given you of the water capability and the sewage capability, and were the village to develop its own property at the workshop and move them to the pit, it would certainly be an opportunity to drastically increase our footprint at a fairly nominal cost for public works to maintain within that line of sight there. I'll keep going on if there's more, otherwise we'll move on to the next section. Councillor Bain?
Yeah, just regarding the expanding the tax base idea, which if it can be done, I'd be all in favor of it, but there's another way of working at it. And I would think, how about lowering project costs through a mobilized volunteer crew? It's sort of floated around a few times, but we've never really gotten organized on it. And it presents some challenges, but I think if you get a competent group of volunteers ready to take on projects that they'd like to, and it fits with our plans and everything, they could save the village a ton of money. I could rattle off a few projects, but I don't think it takes much of an imagination to figure out which ones would work. And as far as looking at things from a professional stance versus a volunteer stance and being nervous of the volunteers, I like to point out I spent 30 years as a full-time firefighter, and I live in a volunteer fire department community. I think we can trust volunteers. You train them, you teach them, give them the guidelines, give them the tools to work with, and they can make a struggling community actually viable. And that's it for.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bain. Okay. If there's no other questions, we'll move to the next section.
Just before we do, I think that there's a difference between item G and other items further down the path. Item G is really about ways in which the community or council in the past and has looked at ways to raise money, and that's by doing road closures and creating lots and selling them. So the change here, the addition on here that I think Councillor Abbott probably has a couple of questions about, is the addition of Kelvin Grove parking lot as a potential piece of land that could be closed to create a parcel for sale to further enhance the financial viability of the village. So that particular idea was something that has come up just in passing a few times over the last couple of years. And I think was actually the genesis of that was, I believe, from a resident of Kelvin Grove. The parking lot there has always been somewhat of a thorn in the side of the residents who live on Tidewater Way. Potentially also those on Sweetwater who may suffer from the noises that come from that parking area sometimes. It has been known as a party place, a place where people come to hang out, perhaps going or coming from the cliff jumping area. All of the Tidewater Way is, at this point in time, permit parking only. And the space at Kelvin Grove Beach Park is not a large park in terms of space for residents to move around. I'm not sure what the actual numbers are for usage. I don't know if we've ever put a counter down there, but I think that the possibility exists that we could do away with the parking lot, still provide, probably could still have about 3 or 4 parking stalls, possibly 5 at most, at the entrance to what that current parking lot is. And the rest of it could become a parcel on which a single-family dwelling could be built. And it doesn't have to be a single-family dwelling, but I'm just using that as an example. I think that doing that and just having a couple of parking spots that would still be for residents only, or somebody with a guest parking pass, would accomplish a couple of things. It adds to the financial viability of the village by selling land and putting it into reserves for future use, for infrastructure or what have you, as well as addressing a noise and irritation nuisance issue that has plagued that neighborhood for some time. In order to do it, I think a referendum would be required in any event. So that referendum would have to be community-wide, and the reason it would require a referendum is because the parking lot is actually designated as park land. So to the best of my knowledge, you cannot change the designated use of parkland without having a referendum. So that would be something that the community would be able to voice their opinion on in any event. But certainly before going down that path, I think it's worthy of putting it on the table so that council can consider it, perhaps provide some thoughts on it. And before going any further, I think the next step would be to consult with the people who live in Kelvin Grove neighborhood about what their thoughts are about the idea, and then see whether or not it has any legs to go any further before, planning on doing a referendum or anything like that. Perhaps that would be something that would be a sort of a long-range projection for the 2022 election, perhaps tied in with that.
Tied in, I agree. Thank you very much for that background, CEO DeJohn. I've asked the recorder, which number are we going in, Cameron?
Not tonight.
Not tonight?
No.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. Yes, Peter, I certainly, when I read this and when I asked the question, please prior to the meeting, I did not understand that the idea was that this would create a single family lot. I now read this whole section G with a slightly different view that maybe should be cleared up. And you said it may or may not be a single family lot. I think whether it's the Ocean View site, other Brunswick Beach road ends, which I think was left two potential, or the Kelvin Grove parking lot, are going to be surveyed, developed and sold as single residential within our existing bylaws. I think that's a very different discussion for residents. But then we should really sort of demarcate it that way and say that's what we're looking at. But I don't think we've actually done that. I think the opportunity for certainly Ocean View and our Kelvin Grove, in my mind, the opportunity was changing to some sort of multi-family or higher density. But I think it's two very different discussions.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that I hear what you're saying about the discussion could be two different discussions for the residents depending on whether it would be a single family or a duplex. I don't think you'd get anything more than a duplex there. It's not that big a piece of land. It's constrained by the hillside from the parking area up to Tidewater and by the hillside going down to the train tracks. There's just not that much room. So the very biggest you would get out of this would be a duplex. It would have to be configured in some way that would provide, maybe it would be an up and down, or maybe, yeah, I'm not exactly sure. But I don't think it's necessary to take the notion of having a duplex versus a single family, both of which are provided for under our current legislation, off the table. Certainly that would be something that would be part of the consultation process with the residents, and information would need to be presented in a way that they can understand what the distinctions are, what that would look like potentially, what the implications might be, and they can provide feedback on that, and council can take it from there. But I don't think it's necessary to preclude the possibility at this point in the conversation.
Okay, but the suggestion is not anything higher density than that. We're not talking about townhouses or more than two or multiple story, three-story or something like that.
I don't think that would be necessarily appropriate for that particular location.
Yeah. Councillor Cunliffe, I thought you were handy. Oh, there you are. Councillor
Sorry, one
Cunliffe.
last question. And could you read the same into the Ocean View site? Because I think that was considered different.
It's difficult.
The Ocean View site would, I think, be something that council ought to consider a higher density on, not really the same ball of wax.
Councillor Abbott, I know the CAO is very familiar with these properties that are on the list. I am too. I think if we brought this back at another time, the challenges would be clear and we can have a discussion on that. So if that's fine with you, I'll park that piece for now and go to Councillor Cunliffe. Is that okay? Take that as a yes. Councillor Cunliffe, you're up.
Just muted.
You're muted, Councillor Cunliffe?
Sorry, yeah, in regards to eliminating all type of guest parking, prior to several years ago, social media blowing up the cliffs, the majority of guests that came to Kelvin Grove were people that are diving. And I would be remiss to eliminate their accessibility to Kelvin Grove. It's been a known dive destination for decades, and it's a protected part of Howe Sound, and so just something to keep into consideration, that we're trying to eliminate teenage partiers from putting themselves in peril going out to property that has nothing to do with Lions Bay, as opposed to allowing accessibility to people in the province who have a pastime that they're passionate about, and you know, there's a lot of gear when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure where they're supposed to park it and walk it. So, just a comment.
Thank you, Councillor Cunliffe. We've got no more questions on this section, unless there's a hand. There being none, CAO, page 14 of your list.
So, I guess we're moving on to communication and public engagement. So, sorry, one sec. Okay, so what we have is the items currently on the strategic plan include the following. A, continue to build staff skills in customer service, communication, administration, planning, finance, IT, records management, and emergency management. B, maintain existing staff levels. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the wrong one.
Wrong section.
I'm on the
Page
wrong
14.
one. I apologize.
Page 14.
Yeah, I've got it unnumbered.
Oh, so you got it under community
With my own
plan,
notes.
supported community plan.
No, that's not the one either. We're supposed to be on communication, public engagement, which is, did I cut it off? Informed and engaged public communications.
So we're gonna, well, it doesn't matter which order we're going. So let's go to the
That's next on our,
oh, sorry, I'm going in the package.
yeah, sorry.
Okay.
On the schedule, which is page 6 of your package, the next topic that we have from 6:15, we're a little late, to 7:15 is communication and public engagement. So under informed and engaged public communications, we have utilize outside consultants for select community consultations. For example, asset management investment plan, housing needs assessment, development permit areas, boulevard bylaw, and climate action. The second one is promote website, village update, and Lions Bay alert. Thirdly, develop a communication strategy, emphasize have your say for more important items. And D, ensure residents are kept informed and safe in respect of COVID-19 guidelines and effects on village operations. So in respect of the first one, and sorry, we're getting a little bit of feedback here.
No, it's not feedback. Mr. Stone, I would just ask that you remain muted.
Can't you mute him?
But I've been not permitted to chat either. I've been cut off from my chat. I would like to be able to chat.
Yeah, we're not taking chats at the moment. You'll have
Why not?
another opportunity to.
Is that censorship?
I can tell
You want feedback from the community and now you're saying we can't give you feedback?
Actually, Mr. Stone, I can tell you from other Zoom calls in the municipal world, chat is usually between the chair or the coordinator to pass on information. The public is not invited into the chat room.
But you are our representatives. You represent us. Why can't we speak our mind?
You'll be getting another opportunity in the
censorship.
agenda, and you
What's
can
the
also.
point? How can I participate if I can't say something? You don't want feedback? You say you want feedback, and now you say I can't feedback. That's,
It's the 2-minute section at the end of the meeting.
There's time at the end of the meeting. You're welcome to participate then. My phone is beside me.
you want participation, and then you say I can't participate because I can't chat.
Mr. Stone, this
That's
is...
not participation.
Well,
You want participation of the community, and now you say don't participate.
Mr. Stone, you keep talking, you're gonna get cut off, so stop it.
Are you a dictator to Mr. What's your name? Mr. Chairman?
I'm
You
trying.
want public participation and you're going to cut me out? Very nice.
Then let's hold that thought, sir. Thank you for muting yourself. Right. During the public communication part too. Perfect. I think, Peter, you were just, Councillor Abbott, I see your hand up in a second. You were summarizing?
I think I've gone through the list, and it's probably best to just open up the conversation, I think.
Open up, Councillor Abbott. You're muted, sir. Councillor Abbott, you're muted.
Sorry,
You're live.
hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Can I just first comment on what Mr. Stone says? We did actually say in the have your say that there would be opportunities to comment during commentary sections, which I thought I think you wrote that, not me, which I took to believe we pause at the end of sections and engage commentary from the public, and some people had asked me that, and I had actually told them that. So Mr. Stone was not one of those people. So maybe there was an opportunity just at the end of each section we could have paused, but I'll leave that for now. I did tell people there would be chances to interact in the meeting. All that being said, we're going to go through the rest of the items on this engaged public communication portion, or do you want to talk about item A?
You've got the floor, sir.
Okay. My first question is, what are the thoughts on needing consultants for climate action? That one's new to me, it just jumped at me right now. To a theme of Councillor Baines, I think we rely on consultants more than we should, and I agree with him. Actually, I won't speak for him. I believe we rely on consultants more than we need to sometimes, and I'm not sure why we would need a consultant to initiate climate action, or what is the thoughts there?
So my thought in including that item in this item is along the lines of the presentation that we had at the last meeting from Tracy Saxby from My Sea to Sky, and the program that was put forward in terms of offering to bring Lions Bay along as a pilot project community. to enhance our ability and capacity to report on GHG emissions and other climate action initiatives that we're not presently reporting on. There were a number of things, as you know, that were in that report that will come back to council again. And that's all I meant in terms of that particular item. I'm not suggesting that we go hire some other consultant to do work related to climate action. My thought process was simply that her program that was provided to council at the last meeting was one that would certainly be one for council to grab the reins on and take advantage of, along with setting up of our own climate action committee and establishing the matters that the committee would work on as well. I imagine there'll be some overlap, and that hopefully there'll be a synthesis of ideas and areas in which all of the objectives and goals of the actions that are to be formulated in that area can be achieved both by the committee and through the assistance of MySea Sky.
Okay, so yeah, fair enough, and I guess that would get driven by the committee when they get an action in January. On the have your say, item C, and going back to the Lions Bay Connector, in your Lions Bay Connector piece, the last statement you made was first step would be consultation with the residents. I think you said the local residents. Although the recommendation that you asked for didn't mention that, so I assume that should still come into there. But my question is it really a matter for local residents, or is it a matter for a wider part of the community? And is it a have your say item? And the reason I say that is, one of the things we didn't touch on in there is, this grant money could have been used to enhance other parts of the village connectivity to transit. It could have been used, somewhere higher up the village down to the new stairs, the part below the school that doesn't have a separated walkway. It could have been used in other areas. And I didn't realize until now, actually, the previous council asked for this in 2017. I didn't realize that. I thought it had just come up recently. But do you see this as a have your say item? Something we go out to the wider community, or do you really believe it's only the locals that should be consulted?
My comment in the report was addressed to the people on Lions Bay Avenue who would be most affected by the multi-use trail. I didn't see it as a wider piece, and I think that there really isn't the opportunities elsewhere in the village for transit infrastructure. We have a very limited system, we have a very limited route. There's only so far off the route that you can go in terms of arguing that what you want to build is related to transit. So, the stairs that we have going down to the underpass are one that we were able to do with that kind of an argument, because we're basically on the route. I think if you get up by the school, there's no transit up there. There never will be transit up there. Widening that pathway for students is already a project which is on Public Works' list going forward, to widen that so that cars can park four wheels off the pavement and still have the dedicated pathway along Bayview up until the crosswalk when they cross over to the school side. That's been something that's been on the books as something that we want to try and get accomplished at some point, and has been an objective for a while. In the Brunswick area, the bus is already a seat which is under the cover of the underpass. Kelvin Grove has a bus shelter. There's not really any other infrastructure that's required that we could argue is transit related, that we could use the funds for to any substantive degree at all. And so, looking at it from that perspective, I think that, it doesn't really have the wider applicability in terms of the rest of the village saying, well, that could have been spent in my neighborhood, because I don't think it could be. I think that's really, there's not much options in terms of where it could be spent. So, just in terms of the consultation, it was intended to have it with the people on Lions Bay Avenue.
Okay.
Why would safe connectivity for people above the highway down to transit be any different to people on Lions Bay Avenue walking up the hill? And a lot more people use the bus that walk down the hill from various parts of the village and go under the bridge than come up from Lions Bay Avenue. I don't understand why there's a difference.
Well, as I said earlier, during the presentation of the report, there are aspects to this that are, the transit TransLink is the one providing the money, and so we're looking for ways in which we can tie in transit-related aspects to a project which is really intended to provide safe pedestrian access for villagers to get around, whether it's going from Central Lions Bay to Kelvin Grove or vice versa, or whether it's for residents to go up and down the hill to the beach park. Going down Lions Bay Avenue to the beach park is it's not a transit route, obviously, but it's peripheral. It's close enough on the periphery that we can pull it into this and do something that enhances safe pedestrian access and call it transit related. But I really don't think that there's opportunities elsewhere in the village to do that.
Thank you very much, CAO. And Councillor Abbott, I'm going to park you for a minute. There's two others who would like to speak. Councillor Boromir, you're first, and I saw Councillor Cunliffe's hand up. So Councillor Cunliffe, if you still want to, put it up again. Councillor Boromir?
I just want to make sure I'm unmuted. I just wanted to just draw the focus back to engaged public communication. The residents are our major stakeholders in all of our projects and everything we do here. So I think this is a really key part of our mandate, is to ensure that we're engaging the public effectively. Neville has done a really pressing job of the Have Your Say initiative, and I applaud that. I think it's a really great thing that's been brought into council, and I think we should continue to push on that. To me, that's almost like a core service at this point. It's just something we have to continue to do. Maybe we increase the periodicity of that kind of engagement. On item B, we talk about promoting the website, the village update, the Lions Bay alert. To me, again, these are all sort of core services and just part of what we should be doing anyways. But if we had to talk about sort of new initiatives on public engagement, I would argue that we're a little flat on the social media side. We might need to just get up to speed with the times and then have a bit more social media engagement. And bringing in subject matter experts, I don't know if that's about communication or if that's about technical competence. So I'm struggling to kind of see the focus there, how that relates to communication. But I do think that bringing in subject matter experts makes a lot of sense. We brought one in the other day to the infrastructure committee around our long-term water strategy, and that was a really useful presentation, and that should have been shared widely. That meeting can be attended by the public, but the information that was shared during that meeting would be really important for all villages to understand, what's happening with our drinking water, where it comes from, and to have that technical background. So I think we can do a bit of a better job there with sharing our technical know-how and the issues facing the villages on that front.
Thank you.
That's my commentary, yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boromir. I'm going to circle back on that one. Councillor Cunliffe, You're on a different screen for me?
I'm good.
You're good? I'm thinking that, it's still, I'm noodling this one. I think for our next council meeting, I think maybe we should draw an agenda piece to readdress communication and and push that one around because it does involve some budget issues and staff allocation and things like that. So I think we've hit on some ideas here. I'm with all the councillors that want to personally thank Councillor Abbott for the Have Your Say, which he's initiated. And I think the key piece here, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I think we all agree we want to do more and do better. And I think, so if that's fine with my colleagues, well, Councillor Barmeyer, you get last word on this? Yep, you're happy, good, thank you. And so I'll ask staff to make a notation on that one. I can talk to the councillors and get a better flavor for what we're talking about before the meeting. Are there any other questions on this section for the councillors? Okay, there being none, I'm going to use my chairman prerogative in this. And Mr. Stone, I hope you're listening. I get where you're coming from, but certainly in the corporate Zoom and the municipal Zooms that I work at, the chat function is usually where the co-chair, which is usually the administrator, is sending information, or executive assistants are sending links and things like that. It is usually not an interactive vehicle between the participants that are at the table and the gallery. But, you know, I get the part that you thought it was, and I think Councillor Abbott's, I think we're stumbling in the right direction. We want interaction, and I see that public engagement is way down the list, and we've had this for a while. So I tell you what, I'm going to hold the agenda here for a second, and we will go to public participation for 4 minutes. And I'd allow 2 speakers now, and then we'll do a couple more in, say, half an hour. So, excuse me. So, Mr. Stone, if you'd like to unmute, if you've got a comment, and we'll give you a minute on that one, you're welcome to speak.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. McLaughlin.
You're welcome.
Several months ago, I distributed or made available to the members of council an article by Mr. Michael Schellenberger, and he was one of the key people who were involved in the so-called climate change issue. And he, in this article that I supplied, apologized to people for the climate scare. So my question is, why are we as a village of Lions Bay have any interest whatsoever in climate when the facts of the matter being that the population of the planet has no effect whatsoever on climate. Climate is essentially produced by the sun and the effects with water vapor and clouds. And climate is not changed by what people do on this planet. So I would offer the suggestion that we don't get involved in anything climate because it's a waste of time. And if you would like a copy of this article by Michael Schellenberger, and he also wrote a book outlining his revised viewpoints, and it would be wise maybe for someone in the council to get a copy of that book. It's called Apocalypse Never.
Mr. Stone, if you could send me a link or something, and we won't let it go. So thank you very much, Mr. Stone. Could you mute yourself, Carl?
I would appreciate it if I could have my chat open, please.
No.
You don't have to respond to me. I'm just making comments. Thank you.
Thank you, no. Thank you, him.
I'm not requiring response. I'm just making comments, which is what you want from the village people.
I'm giving you the opportunity now, and I'll give you an opportunity again in half an hour, sir. And there's email. So, is there another resident that would like? Thank you, Mr. Stone. Former Mayor Broughton.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, lots of thought has gone into the comments tonight, and there are so many strategic issues that I want to iterate my earlier comments that this is a time for public consultation at a broader level. I do want to identify that $66,000, well, it's 25%, $66,000 is, and $40,000, the other TransLink contribution from Lions Bay. You know, when we look at 2.2 million for a water project with 1.7 million in grants, if we get it, that's a difference of 500,000 that our CFO suggested that we borrow. And while I'm not objecting to borrowing for such projects at all, I am objecting to money being whittled away. So now we have $106,000 potentially, where instead of that borrowing being 500,000, it would be 400,000, which is 20% less. So what I'd say is that, first of all, I think that it's laudable to bring all of these before the community. The problem again is that it's December. That's a terrible month to be consulting. It's a month where you consult with the community because and I'm not saying this is your intent, by the way, but if it was an intent, you'd ram something through then because people are not got their eye on community consultation. Whereas in the spring, people are opening up. So I hope you'll bring it back in the spring. There are many items. Nye did an excellent report.
Okay.
Many items there that probably just need to go ahead. You know what I mean? Road work needs to go ahead, etc.
Mayor Broughton.
Yeah.
Close off, please.
I just want to finish with this, is saying that something like the Lions Bay Avenue Connector project or the sale of Kelvin Grove parking lot, they are not items that would just go on the table. This is a breach of the official community plan. And those are official community plan items, and I do not recommend that you apply for the TransLink funding to change the Lions Bay Avenue. What I support is what Councillor Bain said, is that draw on volunteers and create something that feels like the village instead of feels like Whistler or downtown Vancouver.
Thank you very much for your point of view, Mayor Broughton. It's either David or Brigida Shore. I thought I saw a hand up there. This is an opportunity. We'll go another 2 minutes.
Hi, thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate the outreach for community involvement in this. And I know a couple of the councillors have already said, and the mayor said that you're going to increase this time on the agenda. I just want to say that it feels to me that even though you're not getting a lot of response from the residents, and I reached out to a number of my friends and asked if they would come on tonight with whatever their views are. I just encourage you to continue to do the outreach, even if some of the comments that you get may be agreed to by less than 1% of the world. Sorry, Mr. Stone, but you and I can have a friendly debate on your topic there. Moreover, it's just very important that you continue to get this feedback. There are a couple of items that I was hoping to discuss as well. I think it was Councillor Abbott that mentioned that as far as the beach park goes, there have been grand plans that require outside funding that haven't come through, and this just continues to get kicked down the road. The bathrooms, the washrooms at the beach park are an absolute disgrace. You won't find washrooms like that anywhere else in Housetown. And that is a bit of an ambassador of Lions Bay to the outside world. People who come to use the beach will go into those bathrooms and they'll just be disgusted. And it looks bad on each and every one of us. So please don't wait for a grand plan to redo the swings and the lawn and put a pool in and everything else. Fix the washrooms. Fix it with the same way they do it in West Van, in Squamish, in Gibson's, in areas where it's just easy to clean and the wood wasn't built in the 50s and the toilets are maintained. And then
The third item that I have, well, actually, those are the most two important things I wanted to go over at this point. I don't understand how Ocean View Road doesn't get any maintenance or sufficient maintenance to deal with all of the potholes there. A neighbor of mine told me it might have to do with the work that's being done on the culverts, and that the paving wouldn't be able to be completed until the culverts are. It'd be interesting to know why, but it is clearly the worst road in the village, and it's one of the longest as well. So in levels of importance, so thank you for the outreach. Please continue it regardless of the volume you get initially. You'll get more if you keep this going. And then secondly, if we could do something about those beach parks, if nothing else, just do the washrooms.
Thank you very much, David. And I tell you, we're going to hustle along here, but we'll comment on the beach park towards the end. So if you can grab another coffee, another half an hour, we should be down at the end in the last piece. And I would go for another piece of public input before we close tonight. And Public Works Manager, if you could think about the potholes for the next half hour before I ask you the question. CAO?
The section on communication and public engagement was scheduled to be the last one for this evening, with a wrap-up following. So I think community planning would be far too big a subject matter to begin now. And I guess one other option would be if we wanted to cover off the village organization topic. That would take one item off of tomorrow night's agenda.
Let's do that. I think the councillors can hang in there. Strong village organization. Please proceed.
Do that.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm not sure what page that's on of your package.
It would be page 17.
Okay. So what we have going forward from last year's strategic plan document is continue to build staff skills in customer service, communication, administration, planning, finance, IT, records management, and emergency management. Maintain existing staffing levels. And I've added for council's consideration, but consider the right opportunity for a community planner for Lions Bay. I'll come back to that. Item C is advance strategic planning for Lions Bay Fire Rescue service levels, review fire bylaw regarding current services provided, and I've added service level declaration, which council did address recently, and expanded service area. I'll come back to that as well. Item D, build relationships with First Nations, listed as ongoing. And item E, update core service review, which I've listed as medium term. So going back to item B, which was the addition of consider the right opportunity for a community planner. We did have, I'm trying to remember exactly when it was. It was probably a couple of years ago now. Time's really flying by in the past year, where we did have council's buy-in to go out and get a part-time community planner. We did advertise. Of the applications that were received, 9 out of the 10 were straight out of school. The 10th was someone who has some experience and was someone that I interviewed and offered the position to, but he ended up going to another community. And it just died off from there. I didn't feel it was the right fit for the organization to be hiring a planner straight out of planning school. Somebody coming out of that environment needs to be in a planning department where they can be mentored by experienced planning staff who can guide them and bring them along in a natural way. We didn't have the ability to do that, so that opportunity drifted by us. However, I think it is something that, with a number of things going forward, that the community needs to look at and keep in the front windshield of the car as we drive forward, is something that we should perhaps revisit. The difficulty will always be to find the right person. It's got to be somebody who's got experience, and maybe it's somebody who's a retired planner who wants to spend some additional time staying active and providing their wisdom, as opposed to simply trying to find planning services from a consultant as needed. I think that there's something to be said for having somebody who becomes familiar with the community and learns more about the community, and ultimately is in it for a longer haul. So I think that it would be something that we ought to have as an option if the opportunity presents itself. But I don't think it's going to present itself unless we go out looking for it. So council would have to think about this and consider whether or not it's something that we want to proceed with or attempt to proceed with. Any questions on that before moving on to the next item?
I guess not so much questions. Are we, I guess, are we discussing village organization merits thereof, or is it just your presentation still, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I all ears in terms of council having any thoughts about the comments I've just made. If not, then it's something that I would probably bring back to council in terms of a more thorough proposal in terms of what I'd be looking for and whether or not it's something that fits within the budget. It'd be a sort of a business case kind of presentation in terms of the budget presentation and when council's looking at weighing all those different priority items.
Have we reached out to any local architects who might want to take that on, or considered a planning committee, a local planning committee? It's a question that just popped up. I remember we talked to, I can't remember exactly now where this happened, but there are local architects, and I just wonder if that's something we can entertain, or maybe put a call out for in the View or something like that.
I think what we'd be looking for is an actual community planner, someone who has that skill set. Is not necessarily the same skill set as an architect. I think an architect is while they have a good skill set, a wide skill set, they're not necessarily going to have bring the same kinds of skills and abilities to the role of a community planner. Not sure that would be the way I'd want to go. If we were doing a particular project, a building, a rec center, a community facility, then certainly we'd be reaching out to architects. But planning, I don't think, is the same ball of wax.
Can I jump in? Could
Please.
we not put,
Thank you, Councillor
Not-
Coniff. Go.
could we not look for the same sort of talent within Lions Bay? That maybe we have a retired planner, maybe we have someone who's winding down, maybe there is somebody who could fill that role that actually lives within the village and has the village in the front of their mind and not coming from an outside community.
That
I
would be
think it would-
wonderful.
So,
If that
can
person
we,
exists.
Dave Butler would know.
In terms of putting out a call to find people who have the skill set we're looking for and what might be interested in providing services to Lions Bay, certainly we would make sure that call went out to the local community as well, if there is someone within the community, or certainly if anybody knows of a planner living in our community who might be interested in talking to us, certainly my number is easily available.
CAO, could we, you would think that amongst the councillors, we would know of a retired planner or the building inspector would, and my sense is that there may not be one. Would this be, I don't want to do a fishing trip, but something like in the North Shore News, if you're retired and thinking of this, come to us kind of thing?
Well, planners tend to sort of follow the same sort of publications and look in the same areas if they're interested in work at all. So those are generally the areas that you go to in terms of looking for people, as opposed to community newspapers. Although certainly, you know, the other more traditional route didn't really turn up what we were looking for last time. So, you know, I wouldn't say no to turning over other rocks that haven't yet been examined. So.
Well, you know, the CAOs of the other North Shore municipalities in Bowen, so if you want to reach out there, or if you need help, happy to do that too. Whether we can split one or cut them in three, I don't know. Councillor Abbott, back to you.
Yeah, I don't, clearly we can't afford a full-time planner, so, and finding a retired member of the community would be just too lucky to be true. A consultant on a sort of limited service order type agreement, Peter, you didn't seem to think that had too much chance of success. Is there a reason?
I'm not saying that that's not a feasible option. It's just not necessarily the best option. Certainly, there are planners that do lots of work with small communities on a consulting basis. Some are on retainer, and you know, that is an option, way to go. But I think that if the availability of someone who, you know, could provide services on a part-time basis to the community for the right person might be a better way to go. But, you know, at the end of the day, it might not look too different. So certainly all the options are available.
Okay, and then back to Norm's suggestion, is there a way to do this by committee, but you need a professional person to lead that? Is it Norm or someone suggested that? So that once again we'd have to luck into the right person, but you could have a committee that uses a professional consultant, for example, and says, this is what the community is thinking. Please give us X, Y, and Z back. So you're getting the community, a broader part of the community driving the conversation, as opposed to, you know, just the planner working on his own, or as opposed to going back to the community with what we thought. You could have them sort of driving it through a committee.
I think that a community planning committee would be difficult to, would be a difficult way to approach things without someone with a planning background, a qualified person to lead that committee. Otherwise, you know, you're floundering. I shouldn't say floundering, but I just don't think that that's necessarily an efficient way to approach the requirements and all of the issues that lie ahead for the Village of Lions Bay from a planning perspective. They're not really, a lot of them are very complicated, so, you know, it kind of requires somebody who's got the qualifications to lead different projects.
Is a community planner the same qualification or professional that I would have called a town planner years ago?
Probably.
Okay.
Any more questions, councillors?
No, I'd just like to say, I hope when you feel to bring something back, and we do consider all aspects, even if it is, something that you initially don't feel is got the best chance of success, like involved in a committee or whatever else it looks like. And it would, I agree, would depend on who was the person to lead it. Okay.
Thank you.
So the next item that I'll come back to here is the fire department. And just the additional comment being that in terms of expanded service area, we are presently waiting on reports that are being prepared by Metro Vancouver in respect of Area A communities to our south, and by the SLRD in respect of the communities to our north. So we'll be coming back with further information about those reports and findings and recommendations, and ways in which that could benefit our fire department, or the things that might be required in order for us to move in one direction or another. Things like, something we need to be cognizant of is becoming stretched too thin by providing services both north and south, something that we need to be aware of. Or, if it's a case of providing services to a different level of service, then maybe what we're looking at is an increase in the capacity of our fire department. So those are all things that we'll look at in terms of the issues and challenges that come out of those reports. And that's about all I've got in terms of this particular topic.
No questions? Go on.
So I guess we're, I don't think,
Neville's got a
oh,
question.
sorry.
Councillor Abbott?
Sorry, yeah, I had my hand up on the
Sorry.
on the service level review. So am I correct? This is the spreadsheet document that largely the workshop manager did, where he tracked all the hours that would be spent in different functions. Is that the document we're talking about?
So you're talking about the core service review?
Yeah.
Jumped ahead.
Oh, I jumped ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
I
okay.
thought you paused that you were at the end of the section here. I'm sorry.
No problem.
It's okay. You're a closer, Neville, that's fine. Go.
So, yeah, that was done 2017, I think, but it was reviewed again at the beginning of this council's term. Came forward at the time, along with the analysis that Public Works Manager Jaffer brought forward on staffing levels and where we were at with that. We had people leaving and people that we were hiring, they were in the process of hiring. We've got, I think, full complement now, and for the foreseeable future, I think. Mr. Jaffer's nodding his head. But I think that the reason I put medium term here in terms of target timeline is I think the service review as it stands is still a document that we can look to in terms of service levels and where Public Works is expending its time and resources. I think it will come into play further, and we might have a bit of review in terms of that document with the further development of the asset management investment plan, which will be coming back to council shortly, with options that council will have to consider in terms of levels of service and risk that will be on the table for discussion. So from that perspective, we might be looking again at the core service review, but not in terms of redoing the document, just in terms of assisting council on the levels of service that we're currently providing and the levels of service that are required in order to keep our infrastructure well maintained so that we get the maximum service life out of it.
Are we good, Councillor Abbott?
No, I guess I'd finished my question now that I had a chance to say what I was going to say. So last time we looked at that, my understanding was that the Westfield manager used that document, tracked people's time with that document, and actually did that. And I was expecting we'd see it each year because he told us the actuals where they'd spent in 2018 on each item. So the question is that still being kept up, and is that the case? And if we could see it again, is that what we're saying is an update, or is an update reviewing, reviewing the document itself? That's not my first question. And then my second question is, should that principle be expanded to other areas of the village, specifically the village office? As to where they, what their core service commitment to the village is, and how they're doing it.
I'll let Mr. Jaffer answer the first question that you asked.
So the accounting structure was never changed. I think when the infrastructure, or when the core service level review document came out, we had identified some areas where we could create some new accounts and better track staff time. That's just fallen off the side of our desk. So pulling together that table of where the staff actually spend their time is a labor-intensive chore, and it's definitely not something quick and easy, but it can be brought forward in the spring. Rather than an hour breakdown, the annual report includes a percentage breakdown of actual hours of where staff charge their time, and that's done every year. So it's annually in the annual plan. It's just not broken down in a table and identified per activity.
Okay. I kind of recall from the previous conversation, Maya, that I thought staff who worked for you, the workshop guys, had time codes that they're supposed to code their time to and automatically updated. So you're saying that functionality ceased to work, or wasn't? No,
that functionality is still there to the same level. However, in creating the core service level review, there was more time put into breaking it out with staff. So we had meetings to discuss. So for example, there's one line item on the timesheet called water service connections. That single line item may have 5,000 hours, but breaking that down into leak detection, service repairs, customer complaints, that involves sitting down with staff and trying to gauge a level of
So that was a manual test then, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Berkby?
So I think that, as Mr. Jaffer alluded to, it would be a very labor-intensive exercise to try and create something like a core service document similar to what he's got for Public Works to itemize the requirements that are fulfilled on a daily basis by office staff, myself included. Certainly there are a number of functions that are legislative in nature that must be complied with, and I think first and foremost of the requirements that the finance department and the CFO have in terms of budget and all of those things that you see generally on an annual basis, the finance calendar and all of the items that have to be brought forward by the CFO every year. Breaking out the time required to do those functions, I'm not sure would add value to council's oversight of the organization. But in terms of a document that outlined the various functions of the organization, that could certainly be pulled together, but I'm not sure of the value of trying to, we don't presently track our time by file right now, and haven't, so there would be no historical record to compare it to, but yeah, I'm just, certainly something I could ponder in terms of whether something could be put together, but I think that to get to the kind of document that NI did in terms of core service review for Public Works would be something that would be not within the capacity of the corporate department at this point in time. By the way, what he pulled together is something that you would normally pay a consultant many tens of thousands of dollars to pull together for a municipality. The fact that he did that kind of work himself speaks to his abilities, and I think it was commented on by people who know better than I that what he was able to do was a very professional and extremely well done piece of work in terms of core service reviews. I'm not sure if he'd be available to do one for the corporate side of the organization or not, but I think he might be a little busy.
All right.
I think Mr. De Jong said it correctly. You have to have staff tracking their time in that way to develop a core service review. So without staff tracking, and that includes setting up a multitude of GL accounts to track their time as well. It's not a simple task. Engineering and Public Works are used to it. That's the way they're driven by asset and activity.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and if I hadn't said before, yes, I was impressed with Nai's presentation of that core service review, the yeoman effort. I was, if I didn't say so before, I was remiss of me. I was kind of,
thank you.
I was very impressed. But to the point of, to some of us it's normal, which means you think it's easy and everyone does it. For those of us that work in firms that are consultants, for example, we spend our whole life doing timesheets every day, and it's just become second nature. You track, which client you're working for, which project you're working on, where you put your effort in. And for those of us in management positions, it's like the key thing to understand, why is a particular client getting let down or some area not of performance lacking. So it just becomes something that I'm used to being such a normal tool of how to do our job. And it, once set up and operating, once people get used to it, it is a very effective way of understanding, are people focusing in the right places, or is there something that's falling by the wayside or not? So anyway,
all right.
I would
Councillor,
give a suggestion of that.
all right, although Councillor Abbott, I'm going to ask you to park on this one, but we will start tomorrow night on this one. as a carryover item. We'll give you an overnighter to think if you want, whether that's something you want to talk to your colleagues about. Councillor Bain, I thought I saw your hand up for a glimmer. Do you have something, or is it a flyby?
No, that one was a thumbs up for nice work on the core service charge.
Well, even better. Thank you very much. I think there's just the last piece here, and I'd like to conclude because I'd like to move us towards the close, which was a native thing, or did we do that?
Yep.
We did that, sorry.
I just touched on it, but I don't
Good.
have any
There we go. So
expansion.
thank you very much. That concludes that section, and so we've gotten ahead of the ball. So CAO, I think we've been working our way through the correspondence as we've been going along here. And there is no new business at this moment, and I think I was going to go to the public questions for 10 minutes and then move to adjourn, if that sits well with you. Yes, thank you very much. So we'll start with Mr. Shore. I did ask the CFO, because I knew she had the numbers. I thought I had them, but she's got a better grasp of them. I will say this, that the beach park is dear to my heart. I chaired the committee that put in a lot of good work to cover off a lot of items. The deal in going for the grant approach is that when you can lever 3 or 4 to 1, it's a better deal. And it seems that everything is so doggone expensive. And even in the committee piece, the washroom was, and the public works manager brought several of them forward that are done through West Van and other communities, and they're all running in the north of $300,000 range, which I think it's fair to say that doesn't resonate with the village right off the bat as a standalone. But there's some other pieces to this, and I'm going to hand this over to the CFO for the numbers, and then I'll conclude with my own comments on the washrooms. CFO?
Yeah, so the grant we requested is project cost of just over $1 million. About $785 would be covered by the grant, and $285 would be the village's share that we plan to draw from reserves. So what I anticipate happening in the 2021 budget is putting that proposed revenue in with the village share of the costs. Of that amount, we've already fundraised $42,000 for the playground through donations and some fundraising, and we've also already taxed for the kayak rack. So it's my understanding, and this will be reflected in the budget, what would happen is if we get the grant, we'd continue all the way through, do the washrooms, everything else. If we don't get the grant, and we anticipate hearing in the summer, we would still do the playground because we fundraised for it, we'd still do the kayak rack, and the balance of the funds that we had already planned to be our share would go towards a washroom. So I'm thinking either way, depending on the results of the grant, the plan is still to do the washroom. So I just still wanted to be clear on that it wasn't an either or. This was just an opportunity to get more of the washroom covered and other things in the park. But we won't be trying for the grant again. So if we're unsuccessful this time, we would still be proceeding with the kayak rack, the playground, because they've been separately taxed or fundraised for. And we would have money that we had already budgeted for our share that we would just put towards the washroom.
And thank you very much, CFO Rourke. So on that one, so the number, Mr. Shore, is $285,000 if we didn't get the grant, that could be available for the washrooms. I think that's a big number for our community to swallow. So I've written on my thing, as I've had for some time, to plan for the washrooms if the grant doesn't fail. I think we'll probably go back to the community. And by that I mean the preferred route would probably be to pull together a volunteer team that might be able to do this at a thriftier number. We've already had an outside and local contractor give us a number and to do it in a contemporary form. Unlike West Vancouver with granite counters and Moen faucets, but that number was well over $300,000. So it's a bit of a cost thing, but it is on council's plate one way or another for this year. If that's good for you, we'll give you a bit of action on that.
Well, yeah, thanks very much. What concerns me is that anytime there was talk about doing something for the washrooms, there was also discussion and interlaced discussion about doing the
I don't know, the kayak rack and other areas of the beach park. What I'm trying to emphasize is the need to get the washrooms done as a priority, regardless of other projects that may come down the road in the future. As to the cost, you guys may be aware, it was with the previous council, I believe, but Ron, you were on the council and Fred was as well. A private group came to council with a contractor who's well versed in doing this kind of work. In fact, he used to do this kind of work. He does upscale work now, and this is really utilitarian work. He came up with a budget of $60,000. And obviously the scope of what would be done is important, but we're talking about clearing out the wall in the middle, not the foundation, but clearing out the wall in the middle and doing a proper job of the toilets and the sinks, okay? It doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I can tell you that this guy does know what he's talking about. Moreover, we were gonna pass the hat around the beach park goers to pay for it. So we came and we said, we'll do the work, we'll pay for it, just give us the right to be able to do it. And cold water was splashed on that, roughly 5 years ago. So we can't keep kicking this can down the road. Getting it done reasonably well with a budget under $100,000, I think needs to be the priority.
Well, I'm going to hold you to that, and you'll be the first one I call when I hear the result of the grant, and we'll see how that goes.
We had less than 15 people, a soft circle to do all of the funding. In other words, $1,000, $2,000 per person. We were going to do it all.
Okay, thank you for.
I was just going to comment that Mr. Short, I'll look up the report that Mr. Jaffer did not that long ago on the building, and we'll send that to you because it clearly outlines all of the issues and why it's not a quick fix. It's not a case of just doing a couple of things and salvaging the building. The building has to go and be rebuilt. I'll send you the report and you can have a look, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact Mr. Jaffer.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, David. I think we've still got a couple more minutes, so 2 more speakers if you like. I see the former Mayor Broughton and Michael are unmuted. If either one of you want to have a minute?
Yep.
Former Mayor Broughton.
Thank you very much. I think Michael wants to speak as well. I'll take my minute. First of all, I'd like to just echo what David Shore has said, and I certainly understand the complexities that Mr. de Jong has just brought forward. I don't understand what they are, but I understand that those create complexities. But I do want to say that I think it's a time to not add staff. I can appreciate Mr. de Jong's dilemma about what do you do in council's dilemma. Do you hire a consultant? And Councillor Abbott, I want to say that as the Associate Executive Director of the EA group, I also recorded my time every day. As billable time, it took a second and off we went. So I just want to say to you, I really appreciated your comments and your understanding of what the simplicity of that. Once it's set up, it's a simple system. But it's important, it's important. And so it goes to my central point, is that we do need to belt tighten, not hire RCMP, not hire another staff position for a planner. What we did previously without an agreement, but not with a prepaid consulting fee, we did hire planning time, and I recognize what Mr. de Jong is saying. It's a real challenge to get that planner, and in our case, the planner retired for I think it was health reasons at the time. He was very, very good. But we just called upon him and we paid as we needed to call upon him. And our village is at a size where that's really the personality of what we need to do. The RCMP, a part-time RCMP, will probably add $100,000 to our payroll each year. This is not a good idea. And a planner, we've got a land master plan that we haven't, gone through yet. We probably need to do an official community plan. Many of this, the infrastructure piece of this is all really pretty straightforward, as you guys know. It's needed, how do we do it, when is it needed, and what's the triage? So what I entrust with council is that there will be a triage of these things, and I really like, and I'm sure it's on all of your minds. I'm just going to reference Councillor Bain just because he, out and out said it, and I think Councillor Neville Abbott said it as well. And that is that it's a time to always, in a village of our size, belt tighten, and that's how we've gotten ahead. So that, let's say we had that $106,000 and we need the washrooms done, and we have volunteers, and we have people who are passing a hat around. You've got the thing done, right? And that's what our history has been. And in our official community plan, volunteerism is a huge piece of our official community plan, and keeping the natural environment. And, I'd be pleased to walk the Lions Bay Avenue lands with Nye and Peter and whatever council member, just to, and I'm sure there would be other community members who would be interested as well, but to do something naturally, not at a huge cost, and that would keep the elegance of the area. I mean, imposing, what we know is when the above highway lands were developed in
Former Mayor Broughton.
let me say this,
Pull it together.
they had sidewalks on them, and as a result, because there was no community feeling, West Vancouver did a study, and they found that where there were no raised sidewalks, and Michael Broughton, when he sat as alderman, put the sidewalk on Bayview Road, so I really understand the need for sidewalks, to Councillor Cunliffe. But to do raised, architectural things that aren't going to let water flow, they're going to confine water.
Thank you very much, Mayor Broughton.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you, council, for all its work, and staff for all your work.
Thank you for your point of view. Mr. Broughton?
Okay, am I able to do video? I guess.
Your voice is good, don't worry about it.
Sorry?
Your voice is clear.
Okay, terrific. Okay, thank you. I've joined tonight the building of this is Have Your Say, and I really appreciate the opportunity to input. Consultation by its very nature involves an interaction of people, though, and I guess the fact that we're using a Zoom meeting is dictated by our time, and that's just the way it is. But that being the case, we are talking about strategic planning to inform the budget. And based on that information, I really encourage you to move very, very cautiously, and that really request that there be no material changes made to, as I said, to any processes or procedures, and that no new projects be initiated or undertaken in the spirit of really holding the line. I mean, a number of the things that have been discussed this evening have involved land use master planning, really, impacts on the official community plan, and so on. So I just think that I really caution you to go slow on this, and to really respect the fact that the community is in significant lockdown, and that we have to be quite cautious.
Thank you very much.
We shouldn't be expanding, increasing, we shouldn't be talking about increasing staffing or selling of properties or whatever at this kind of juncture. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Another 2 minutes. There's 4 folks there. You can fight for it. Last chance. Mr. Marsh?
Yeah, I'll have to put mine in writing, but I just have to kind of reiterate what was just said by the Broughtons, particularly concerning a community planner. I was going over the annual reports there. And it came across to me like in 2012, the population of the village was 1,315, and our payroll total was 717,000. In 2019, the population of the village was 1,323, so we've grown by 8 people, and our payroll was 1.365 million. And I think we need kind of a explanation of that. And then I didn't see this until tonight, and now we're looking at also hiring a community planner. I just think it's time to really, well, as Brenda said, tighten our belts, and we have to be very, very careful about adding expenses. I'm not so sure that we have a revenue problem. I think we might have a spending problem.
You're here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marsh.
Thank you, Phil.
All right, and that will conclude our evening. And